The cardiac monitor screamed its final alert as the emergency room doors shattered inward. Armed soldiers in full tactical gear poured through Riverside General Hospital, weapons raised, voices cutting through the chaos like knives. "Where is Captain Morgan Hayes?" Every head turned toward the tired woman in faded green scrubs standing by the supply cabinet. The one doctors called paranoid. The one they'd just fired 30 minutes ago for questioning Dr. Vincent Callahan's surgical decisions one too many times. Morgan Hayes, quiet, invisible, 34 years old, night shift ER nurse in Black Ridge, Montana, stood perfectly still as rifles swung in her direction. Nobody in that hospital knew she'd spent 6 years running classified combat triage operations in places that didn't exist on any map. Nobody knew the Army had declared her mentally unstable after a mission that left 12 soldiers alive and her career buried in redacted files. She came to Black Ridge to vanish. But the dying man bleeding out on Gurney 7 had just blown her cover wide open. If you want to see how a woman everyone underestimated brought down an entire criminal empire, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in Riverside General's emergency wing buzzed with the same tired frequency they had for the past 3 years. Morgan Hayes moved through the corridor with her badge clipped crooked, her ponytail coming loose, her scrubs stained with coffee from the vending machine that never worked right. She looked exactly like what everyone assumed she was, another burned-out nurse counting hours until her shift ended. Dr. Vincent Callahan brushed past her without a word, his white coat pristine, his stride confident. He didn't see her. Most days, nobody did. "Trauma incoming," the radio crackled. "GSW ×2, massive blood loss, federal escort, ETA 3 minutes. Morgan's hand stilled on the medication cart. Federal escort. Her pulse kicked up, but her face stayed blank. 2 residents scrambled toward the trauma bay. Dr. Callahan barked orders without looking up from his phone. The charge nurse, Patricia Newsom, shot Morgan a look that said, "Stay out of the way." Morgan had been staying out of the way for 3 years. The ambulance bay doors exploded open. 4 federal marshals surrounded a stretcher moving too fast, wheels shrieking against linoleum. The patient, male, mid-40s, gray suit soaked black with blood, gasped shallow breaths through an oxygen mask. His eyes rolled white. 2 gunshot wounds to the abdomen, the paramedic shouted. BP 70/40 and dropping. Lost consciousness twice en route. Dr. Callahan strode forward, gloves already on. "Trauma 1. Move." They transferred the patient with practiced efficiency, but Morgan saw what the others missed. The placement of the wounds, the pattern of bleeding, the way his left hand kept twitching toward his jacket pocket even as he slipped toward shock. This wasn't a random shooting. "Get me 2 units O-neg," Callahan snapped. "Someone page surgery." The patient's vitals crashed. The monitor screamed. His chest stopped moving. "He's coding," Patricia yelled. Callahan froze for half a second, just half a second, but Morgan caught it. The hesitation, the fear. She moved before thinking. "Pressure clamp, now." Morgan's voice cut through the panic like a command, not a request. Her hands were already on the patient, finding the bleeder, applying direct compression with a precision that made the residents stare. "What the hell are you doing?" Callahan's face went red. "Step back!" Morgan didn't step back. She grabbed the clamp from the tray, isolated the severing artery, and locked it down with movements so fast and sure they looked choreographed. The bleeding slowed. The patient's oxygen saturation ticked upward. 20 seconds. That's all it took. The trauma room went silent except for the steady beep of the monitor stabilizing. Callahan's jaw clenched so hard Morgan could hear his teeth grind. "My office. Now." She straightened, hands still bloody, and met his eyes without flinching. He was dying. "You don't make those calls." Callahan ripped off his gloves. "You're a nurse. Act like one." The words hit like a slap, but Morgan had been slapped harder. She walked out of the trauma bay with Patricia's pitying stare following her and the residents whispering behind their clipboards. "Thinks she's special. Probably watched too much TV. I heard she got fired from her last hospital." Morgan kept walking, down the corridor, past the waiting room where families stared at phones, past the security desk where old Frank gave her a sympathetic nod, into Callahan's office, which smelled like leather and expensive cologne. He closed the door. "You've been a problem since day 1, Callahan said, voice ice cold. "Questioning my orders, undermining my authority in front of staff. I was trying to save his life." "You were trying to play doctor." He pulled a folder from his desk. I've documented 17 incidents of insubordination in 6 months. You refuse to follow protocol. You second-guess attending physicians. You create tension in a team environment. Morgan said nothing. She'd learned that silence was safer than explanations nobody wanted to hear. You're suspended, Callahan continued. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge and leave the building. She removed her ID badge slowly, set it on his desk, and turned toward the door. Morgan, Callahan's voice stopped her. Get help. Whatever you're dealing with, you don't belong here. She left without answering because there was nothing to say that he'd believe. The hallway felt longer walking out than it ever had walking in. Other nurses glanced away. Patricia mouthed, "I'm sorry," from behind the nurses' station, but didn't move to help. Frank, the security guard, met her at the exit. "Rough day?" he asked quietly. "Something like that. For what it's worth, I seen what you did in there. That guy would have bled out without you." Morgan managed a tired smile. "Thanks, Frank." She pushed through the doors into the cool Montana evening, October air biting her skin. Her car sat alone under a broken streetlight in the staff lot. 3 years. 3 years of keeping her head down, swallowing every insult, pretending she was just another nurse with no past and no skills beyond what they could see. She was unlocking her car when the explosion tore through the night. The blast wave knocked her sideways into the hood. Glass shattered. Car alarm shrieked. A fireball climbed into the sky from the ambulance bay, orange and black, hot enough that Morgan felt it from 50 yards away. Then the screaming started. She ran toward the hospital instead of away. Old instincts kicking in, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to bury. Through the smoke, through the chaos, through the front doors that now hung crooked on broken hinges. Inside was hell. People scattered in every direction. A security guard lay motionless near the entrance, blood pooling under his head. Smoke filled the corridors thick enough to choke on. And moving through it with tactical precision came 4 men in black masks and body armor, carrying suppressed rifles. Not random violence. A coordinated assault. Morgan dropped low behind the reception desk. Her mind shifted gears, running combat calculations she hadn't used in 3 years. 4 hostiles, automatic weapons, professional movement patterns. They weren't here to rob the pharmacy. One of them barked orders in military cadence. "Second floor, room 217, move." Room 217. The federal patient, the man she'd just saved. They were here to finish the job. Morgan's pulse steadied instead of spiking. Strange how easily the old training came back. She scanned for exits, weapons, cover, found a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall and pulled it free. Not much, but she'd worked with less. The first gunman passed her position without looking down. She waited until he cleared the desk, then swung the extinguisher into the back of his knee with every ounce of force she had. He went down hard. She followed through, slamming the canister into his head before he could shout. The rifle clattered to the floor. She grabbed it, checked the magazine, 20 rounds, and moved. 20s. The hospital's layout was burned into her memory from 3 years of night shifts. She knew every corner, every storage closet, every stairwell. She took the back route to the second floor, keeping low, controlling her breathing the way they'd taught her before everything went wrong overseas. Voices echoed from the main corridor, patients crying, staff hiding, boots on linoleum getting closer. Morgan reached the second floor through the maintenance stairwell and emerged near the ICU. The hallway stretched ahead, emergency lights casting everything in red shadows. 3 gunmen moved toward room 217 in formation, while staff cowered in doorways. She dropped the closest one with 2 shots to center mass. The suppressed rifle made clean mechanical coughs. He fell without a sound. The other 2 spun toward her. She was already moving, diving behind a crash cart, as bullets chewed through drywall where her head had been. Return fire came in controlled bursts, 3-round groups, textbook suppression. These weren't thugs. These were trained operators. Morgan rolled right, came up firing, caught the second shooter in the shoulder. He stumbled back but didn't go down. Body armor. She adjusted, aimed higher, and put the next round through his throat. The third gunman rushed her position. Close quarters. No time to aim. She dropped the rifle and met him with a steel IV pole ripped from its stand, jamming it into his weapon before he could bring it to bear. They grappled. He was bigger, stronger, but she was faster and meaner. She drove her elbow into his face, twisted the pole, and used his own momentum to slam him into the wall. His mask came loose. Mid-30s. Slavic features. Professional soldier eyes. eyes that went wide when he saw her face. "Jesus Christ," he gasped. "Hayes?" She hesitated. 1 second. That's all it took. He threw her off and ran. Not toward the patient's room, away from it, sprinting for the stairwell like something scared him worse than dying. Morgan let him go and moved to room 217. The federal patient was awake, barely, handcuffed to the bed rail. 2 marshals lay dead on the floor. Blood everywhere. The 4th gunman stood over the patient with a pistol aimed at his head. "Don't," Morgan said quietly. The gunman turned, young, nervous, finger on the trigger. "He dies either way," the kid said. "You can walk away, or join him. Put it down. You're just a nurse. You don't want this fight." Morgan raised the confiscated rifle. "Last chance." The kid's hand shook. He was going to do it. She could see the decision forming in his eyes. She pulled the trigger first. He dropped. The patient gasped in relief. Morgan moved forward, checking the marshals, both gone, then turned to the man in the bed. "Who sent them?" she asked. He coughed blood. You're not supposed to be here. You're dead." "Answer the question." "They said you were gone after Syria. They said you were erased." "Syria." The word hit like a punch. Morgan's vision tunneled. "Who said?" "The network, military contracts, supplies moving through hospitals. Callahan. He's connected. They move millions through here every month." Before Morgan could respond, the building shook. Another explosion, closer this time. The lights flickered. Then came the sound that changed everything. Helicopters. The rhythmic thump of military rotors, multiple birds, close enough to rattle the windows. Morgan moved to the glass and looked out. 4 Black Hawks descending on the hospital parking lot. Fast ropes dropping. Soldiers in full combat gear pouring out. Not local police, not SWAT. Army Special Operations. The federal patient laughed weakly. "They found you." Morgan's blood went cold. 3 years. She'd stayed invisible for 3 years. No records, no contact, no trace. Now they were here. The door to room 217 exploded inward. 6 soldiers flooded the room, rifles up, movements precise. They surrounded Morgan in seconds, but nobody fired. The lead operator lowered his weapon, removed his helmet. Captain Derek Stone. She recognized him immediately. Same unit, same missions, same classified nightmare that ended her career. "Captain Hayes," he said, voice tight with something between relief and disbelief. "Stand down." She didn't lower the rifle. "What are you doing here?" "Same thing you are, cleaning up a mess." His eyes flicked to the dead gunman, the wounded patient, the blood on her hands. "Looks like old habits die hard." "I'm not part of this anymore." "That's not your call." Stone gestured to his team. "Secure the floor, lock down protocol." They moved with brutal efficiency, clearing rooms, establishing a perimeter. Morgan stood frozen as military police flooded the corridor outside. This wasn't an investigation. It was an invasion. Stone stepped closer, voice dropping. "The patient you saved? Lieutenant Marcus Webb, federal witness. He's been feeding information about military supply trafficking for 6 months. Someone inside this hospital is moving stolen equipment overseas. Webb was coming to testify when they tried to kill him." Morgan's mind raced. "Callahan. We have surveillance, financial records, encrypted communications, but we needed proof. We needed someone on the inside who wouldn't be compromised." Stone's expression hardened. "We've been watching you for 8 months, Morgan, waiting to see if you'd break cover. You used me. We gave you a chance to matter again." The words stung because they were designed to. Stone knew exactly how to twist the knife. The network moves weapons, medical supplies, even personnel through hospitals across 3 states, Stone continued. Riverside General is the hub. Dr. Callahan coordinates shipments. The hospital administrator signs off on false records. They've made $40 million in 2 years. $40 million? Morgan's stomach turned. "Why didn't you arrest them?" "Because we needed someone inside who could access restricted areas without raising suspicion. Someone with medical clearance and combat experience. Someone they'd underestimate." Stone smiled without warmth. "Someone exactly like you." Before Morgan could respond, boots echoed down the hallway. Loud, fast, panicked. Dr. Vincent Callahan appeared flanked by hospital security, his face red with fury. "What the hell is happening in my hospital?" he shouted. "You can't just storm in here without—" He saw Morgan, saw the rifle, saw the bodies. His expression shifted through confusion to recognition to pure terror in 3 seconds. You, he whispered. Stone stepped forward. Dr. Vincent Callahan, you're under federal investigation for conspiracy, weapons trafficking, fraud, and attempted murder. This is insane. I don't know what she told you, but Morgan Hayes is mentally unstable. She was fired today for saving a federal witness you tried to kill, Stone interrupted. We have your communications with the Kurchenko network. We have financial transfers. We have shipping manifests with your signature authorizing the movement of restricted military equipment through this facility. Callahan's face went white. I want my lawyer. You'll need several. Stone nodded to his team. Detain him. They moved forward, but Callahan backed away, hands raised. You don't understand. They'll kill me. The network, if they think I talked. Should have thought of that before you sold out your country, Morgan said quietly. Callahan's eyes locked on hers, wild with desperation. You think you're the hero here? You're nothing. You're a washed-up soldier playing nurse because you couldn't handle real combat. They threw you away, Morgan, just like they'll throw you away again when this is over. The words should have hurt. They would have, 3 years ago. Now they just sounded pathetic. Stone's team zip-tied Callahan's hands, led him away still shouting threats and denials. Other soldiers were already moving through the hospital, securing evidence, rounding up staff members flagged in the investigation. Morgan watched it all with a strange detachment. 3 years of invisible service collapsing in one night. Everything she'd tried to leave behind crashing back. Stone handed her a tablet. Security footage played on screen. Callahan meeting with unknown men in the parking garage. Transferring equipment through service entrances. Signing documents in his office late at night. We couldn't move without hard proof, Stone said. Webb was bringing the final evidence when they tried to silence him. You saved his life. You broke their operation. I didn't know. Doesn't matter. You did it anyway. Stone paused. The Army wants you back, Morgan. Full reinstatement. Your record cleared. Everything that happened in Syria, they're willing to revisit the findings. Morgan stared at the tablet screen, at the man who'd humiliated her hours ago now in federal custody, at the hospital she'd bled into for 3 years revealed as a front for criminals. What if I say no? Stone's expression hardened. Then you walk away and live with knowing you could have finished this. The patient, Lieutenant Webb, coughed from the bed. Captain Hayes? His voice was weak but clear. They killed 2 good marshals tonight. If you don't help finish this, their families get nothing. The network keeps operating. More people die. Morgan looked at the 2 bodies covered with sheets. Young men. Probably had families waiting for them somewhere. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget what it felt like to matter. Turned out she couldn't. What do you need? She asked Stone. He smiled. Everything you've got. The hospital descended into controlled chaos. Federal agents swarmed every floor. Computer servers were seized, files boxed, staff questioned. Morgan stood in the center of it all, no longer invisible, no longer just a nurse. Patricia Newsom stared at her from behind the nurses' station, mouth open. Who are you? She whispered. Morgan didn't answer because the truth was complicated and Patricia wouldn't believe it anyway. Captain Stone's radio crackled. Sir, we've got a situation. Third gunman wasn't working alone. We just intercepted communications. There's a secondary team en route. ETA 12 minutes. Stone cursed. How many? Unknown, but they're coming heavy. Morgan felt the old familiar cold settle into her chest. The calm before the storm. The moment when everything went sideways and all that mattered was training and will. Evacuate non-essential personnel, Stone ordered. Harden the perimeter. We hold this position. His team moved immediately, but Morgan saw the problem they didn't. You can't evacuate in 12 minutes, she said. This hospital has 200 patients. Critical care. ICU surgery. You try to move them, people die. Stone's jaw tightened. Then we fight here. With patients as collateral damage? You have a better idea? Morgan thought fast. Hospital layout, patient distribution, tactical advantages. The new wing. Construction finished last month, but it's not operational yet. We move critical patients there. Bottle the attackers in the old building. Control the engagement zone. Stone studied her. That's a logistics nightmare. I've been working here 3 years. I know every hallway, every exit, every weakness. Trust me. He paused for exactly 2 seconds, then nodded. Do it. Morgan grabbed Patricia. I need every available nurse. Now. Morgan, No time. Move critical patients to the new wing. Use the service corridors. Go. Training took over. Nurses who'd ignored Morgan for years suddenly followed her orders without question because the fear in her voice was real and contagious. They moved patients on gurneys through back hallways while Stone's team fortified choke points. 8 minutes left. Morgan coordinated the evacuation like a battlefield triage, prioritizing ICU and surgery, leaving stable patients in locked rooms. She moved through the chaos, giving orders in the same tone she'd used overseas when mortars were falling. 4 minutes. The last critical patient cleared to the new wing. Stone's operators took positions covering the main entrances. Morgan found herself next to Captain Stone behind an overturned desk in the main lobby. "Nice work," he said, checking his rifle. "Don't celebrate yet." 2 minutes. The hospital went quiet. Emergency lights pulsed red. Somewhere a phone rang and rang and rang. Then headlights swept through the parking lot. Multiple vehicles, moving fast. Stone's radio crackled. "Contact, 6 vehicles, 20+ hostiles, they're deploying." Morgan's hands found a rifle someone had left on the desk. Muscle memory guided the brass check, the sight alignment, the breathing pattern. She'd spent 3 years trying to be someone else. Looked like that was over. The first shot shattered the lobby windows. Glass exploded inward. Morgan dropped flat, rolled right, came up firing at muzzle flashes. The familiar rhythm of combat pulsed through her. Shoot, move, communicate, shoot again. Stone's team returned fire with disciplined precision. The lobby became a war zone. Bullets chewed through walls. Smoke filled the air. Somewhere an alarm screamed endlessly. More attackers poured through the doors. Professional, coordinated, using military tactics. "They're trying to flank," Stone shouted. "Second floor access." Morgan broke from cover and ran for the stairs. 3 hostiles coming down. She took them with controlled bursts, stepping over bodies, clearing corners, moving like she'd never stopped. The second floor corridor stretched ahead. More gunmen moving toward the ICU, toward the patient she'd just evacuated. Except one room still had a patient. Room 217. Lieutenant Webb. They were coming for him again. Morgan sprinted down the hallway as gunfire erupted behind her. Reached Webb's room just as 2 attackers breached the door. She shot the first one before he cleared the threshold. The second one got a round off that punched through her shoulder. Pain exploded white hot. Morgan dropped, rolled, and fired from the ground. The attacker fell. Webb stared at her from the bed, eyes wide. "You're hit." "I'm fine." Morgan pressed a hand to her shoulder. Blood seeped through her fingers, but nothing vital was torn. She'd had worse. Way worse. She helped Webb out of bed, uncuffed him from the rail, and half-carried him toward the service exit. Every step sent fire through her shoulder, but she kept moving because stopping meant dying. They made it to the stairwell when the door above them burst open. The Slavic gunman from earlier appeared on the landing, the one who'd recognized her. Run from her. Now he had nowhere to run. "Captain Hayes," he said in accented English, "they told us you were dead. They were wrong. I can see that." He didn't raise his weapon. "You remember Aleppo?" Morgan went cold. Aleppo. The mission that ended everything. "I remember. I was there. Different side, but I saw what you did. 12 soldiers extracted under impossible fire. The Syrian unit I was attached to lost 23 men trying to stop you." He smiled without humor. "You're a legend where I come from." "Then you know what happens next." "Yes." He raised his rifle slowly. "I die. But so do you. Your shoulder's compromised. You're protecting a witness you can barely carry. I have backup coming." He wasn't wrong. Morgan's vision swam, blood loss catching up. "Or," the gunman continued, "I walk away. You walk away. We call it professional courtesy between soldiers who've both seen too much." Morgan considered it. Really considered it. The easy choice. The survivor's choice. Then she thought about the 2 dead marshals. The patients hiding in locked rooms. The 3 years she'd spent pretending to be harmless. "No deals," she said. The gunman sighed. "Shame." He moved. She moved. 2 shots rang out simultaneously. Morgan felt the impact slam into her vest. Center mass would have killed her without body armor she wasn't wearing. She waited for the pain. It didn't come. The gunman dropped instead, blood spreading from his chest. Behind Morgan, Captain Stone lowered his smoking rifle. "You're welcome," he said. Morgan's legs gave out. Stone caught her before she hit the ground. "Medic!" he shouted. "Get a medic up here now!" The world tilted. Voices echoed, hands pressed against her shoulder. Someone was asking her questions she couldn't focus on. "Stay with me, Morgan," Stone's voice cut through the fog. "You don't get to check out. Not after all this." She tried to respond, but the words wouldn't form. Darkness pulled at her edges. The last thing she heard before unconsciousness took her was the sound of more helicopters arriving and someone shouting that the hospital was secure. Then, nothing. Morgan woke to the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of a heart monitor. Her shoulder throbbed with the kind of deep ache that meant serious damage barely repaired. The ceiling above her was unfamiliar, not hospital white but military gray, industrial fixtures, reinforced concrete visible between acoustic tiles. She tried to sit up. Her body screamed in protest. "Easy." Captain Stone appeared beside the bed, coffee in hand, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "You've been out for 18 hours. Surgeon said the bullet missed your subclavian artery by maybe 2 millimeters. You're lucky." "Don't feel lucky." Morgan's voice came out rough. She glanced around the room. No windows. Heavy door. Armed guard visible through the small glass panel. "Where am I?" "Secure medical facility. Off the books. You're still technically dead, remember?" The memories came back in pieces. The firefight. Lieutenant Webb. The Slavic gunman who'd recognized her from Aleppo. She touched her shoulder and felt fresh bandages under the hospital gown. "Webb?" "Alive. Already in protective custody giving depositions, thanks to you." Stone pulled up a chair. "The assault team at Riverside lost 11 men. We captured 4 alive. The rest didn't make it." "Callahan?" "In federal custody. Singing like a bird now that his lawyers explained how much trouble he's in." Stone's expression darkened. "But that's where things get complicated." Morgan forced herself to sit up despite the pain. "Complicated how?" "The network Callahan was working with is bigger than we thought. Military supply trafficking is just one piece. We're talking weapons, pharmaceuticals, even personnel smuggling. They move doctors and specialists to black market surgical centers overseas, organs, experimental procedures, the kind of medicine that doesn't ask questions." Her stomach turned. "How long has this been running?" "At least 7 years. Multiple hospitals across 4 states. Riverside was the distribution hub, but there are others." Stone leaned forward. "Callahan gave us names. Hospital administrators, shipping company executives, a few politicians. But the person running the whole operation stayed hidden. Callahan never met them. Everything went through encrypted channels and intermediaries. So we stopped one piece and the rest keeps moving." "Exactly." Stone set his coffee down. "Which is why the Army wants you back. Not just as a soldier, as an investigator. Someone who can move through medical facilities without raising flags. Someone who knows how hospitals work and how combat operations function." Morgan studied his face. "You're asking me to go undercover again." "I'm asking you to finish what you started." "I didn't start anything. I was trying to disappear." "And you did. For 3 years." Stone's voice hardened. "But you saved Webb's life. You exposed Callahan. You stopped an assault team from killing federal witnesses. You're already in this, Morgan. The question is whether you're going to see it through or run again." The words hit harder than they should have. Morgan swung her legs off the bed, ignoring the wave of dizziness. "I didn't run. I was discharged. Unfit for duty. Mentally unstable. Remember? That was politics. The Syria operation went sideways and someone needed to take the fall. You were the easiest target." Stone stood. "But the people who made that call are gone now. New leadership, new priorities. They want soldiers who get results, not politicians in uniform." "What about the 12 men I saved? Do they want to talk about that?" "They already did. 4 of them submitted sworn statements supporting your reinstatement. They're willing to testify about what really happened in Aleppo." Morgan's chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to any of those soldiers since the classified hearing that ended her career. Hadn't known if they blamed her for the casualties, the blown mission, the international incident that followed. "Why now?" she asked quietly. "Because the network you just exposed has ties to the same criminal organizations we were fighting in Syria. The ammunition depot you raided? The weapons cache that triggered the whole disaster? They were being supplied through military hospitals just like Riverside. Same shell companies, same encrypted networks, same invisible leadership." The room seemed to tilt. Morgan grabbed the bed rail for balance. "You're saying the mission in Syria was connected to this?" "We think so, but we need proof." Stone pulled a tablet from his jacket and handed it to her. Security footage played on screen, grainy night vision showing cargo being loaded into medical supply trucks. This was taken 3 days ago at Mercy Cross Hospital in Denver. Same pattern as Riverside. Same shipping manifests, same encrypted communications. Morgan watched the footage with growing dread. You want me to infiltrate Mercy Cross? We want you to apply for a position there. Get hired. Work as a nurse while gathering evidence. The Army will provide full support. Fake employment history, references, surveillance equipment. You'll have a handler monitoring everything. And if they recognize me, they won't. You've been off the grid for 3 years. Your military records are sealed. As far as anyone knows, Morgan Hayes is just another traveling nurse looking for work. Stone paused. Unless you give them a reason to look deeper. Morgan stared at the tablet. The same invisible war she'd fought overseas had followed her home. The same criminals who'd killed soldiers in Syria were now operating on American soil, using hospitals as cover, moving death through institutions designed to save lives. She thought about Callahan's sneer, about Patricia's pity, about 3 years of being invisible while corruption thrived around her. When do I start? She asked. Stone smiled. 2 weeks. That's how long it'll take to process your reinstatement and build your cover identity. You'll spend that time in debriefing and training, bringing you up to speed on current intelligence. I need to see Webb first. Why? Because he risked his life to expose this. I want to know what he knows. Stone considered it, then nodded. I'll arrange it, but Morgan, once you're back in, there's no walking away. The Army doesn't do second chances twice. Understood. He left her alone in the gray room with the tablet and her thoughts. Morgan scrolled through the footage again, memorizing faces, vehicle plates, timestamps. Old habits returning like muscle memory. She'd spent 3 years trying to forget how to be a soldier. Turned out she'd never really stopped. A doctor appeared an hour later, military, judging by his posture, and checked her vitals with professional efficiency. Changed her bandages, prescribed pain medication she refused, cleared her for light duty in 48 hours. You heal fast, he observed. Practice. He didn't smile. Military doctors rarely did. Stone returned that evening with clothes and a badge. Not her old uniform, but civilian clothes. Jeans, plain shirt, jacket. The badge identified her as a Department of Defense contractor. No rank, no unit designation. Ghost credentials. Webb's being held at a safe house 30 minutes from here, Stone said. You have 1 hour. Don't discuss operational details. Don't promise him anything we can't deliver. Morgan dressed slowly, her shoulders screaming with every movement. The face in the small mirror looked older than she remembered. Harder. Lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before Syria. She looked like someone who'd survived things she shouldn't have. The safe house was a ranch-style home in a residential neighborhood that could have been anywhere in America. White picket fence, trimmed lawn, kids' bikes abandoned on the sidewalk next door, perfect camouflage. 2 federal marshals checked Morgan's credentials at the door, led her through a living room that looked staged, generic furniture, blank walls, nothing personal anywhere. Webb sat at a kitchen table with his arm in a sling, looking thinner than he had in the hospital bed. Captain Hayes. He stood when she entered, wincing at the movement. Just Morgan now. How are you holding up? Better than I should be. Webb gestured to a chair. They told me you got shot saving my life. Again, comes with the territory. They sat across from each other while a marshal brought coffee neither of them touched. Webb's eyes held the haunted look of someone who'd seen too much and couldn't unsee it. I need to know what you gave them, Morgan said quietly. The evidence you were carrying. What was worth killing 2 marshals over? Webb pulled a flash drive from his pocket, set it on the table between them. Financial records, shipping manifests, communication logs. 3 years of documentation showing how the network operates. How'd you get it? I was a logistics coordinator for military medical supplies. My job was tracking shipments, verifying deliveries, maintaining inventory records. Started noticing discrepancies about 2 years ago. Equipment ordered but never arriving. Medications disappearing from storage. Surgical instruments going to hospitals that didn't exist. Morgan leaned forward. You could have reported it through official channels. I tried, 3 times. Each report got buried. My supervisor told me to stop asking questions. When I pushed harder, I started getting threats. Anonymous calls. Strange cars following me home. Someone broke into my apartment and left a note on my pillow. What did it say? Stop looking or stop breathing. Webb's hands shook slightly. That's when I went to the FBI. Started building a case on my own, collecting evidence, recording conversations, tracking shipments personally. Dangerous move. I'm a soldier. Danger's part of the job. He met her eyes. But what they're doing, selling military equipment to criminals, moving weapons through hospitals, using medical facilities to smuggle God knows what overseas, that's treason. People are dying because of this network. Soldiers, civilians. I couldn't just ignore it. Morgan respected that. Stupid brave, but honest. The evidence on this drive, she said, nodding to the flash drive. It's enough to prosecute? It's enough to start. Financial transactions linking hospital administrators to shell companies. Shipping records showing military equipment going to unauthorized facilities. Communication intercepts proving coordination between multiple hospitals. Webb paused. But the person running the operation is careful. Everything goes through cutouts and intermediaries. I never found the top. Callahan doesn't know either? Callahan's a middle manager. He follows orders, takes his cut, and stays quiet. Whoever's running this is smart enough to keep layers between themselves and the ground level. Morgan processed that. A ghost enemy. The worst kind. What about Mercy Cross Hospital in Denver? She asked. Does your evidence mention it? Webb's expression sharpened. It's mentioned in the shipping manifests. Frequent recipient of supplies from Riverside. Same patterns, same encrypted communications. He studied her face. They're sending you there, aren't they? Can't discuss that. You don't have to. I can see it in your eyes. Webb leaned back. Be careful. Mercy Cross is bigger than Riverside. More staff, tighter security. And if they're still operating after what happened in Black Ridge, they know someone's hunting them. Then they'll be looking over their shoulders. That makes them more dangerous, not less. Morgan stood. Her shoulder protested, but she kept her face neutral. The marshals who died protecting you, did you know them? Thompson and Rodriguez. Good men. Both had families. Webb's voice cracked slightly. Thompson had a daughter starting college next year. Rodriguez just got engaged. Their families will get answers, I'll make sure of it. How? By finishing this. Webb looked at her for a long moment. They said you were special. The Army people said you were one of the best combat medics they'd ever seen, that you saved lives under impossible conditions. They say a lot of things. Is it true? What happened in Syria? Morgan's jaw tightened. That's classified. So is this. Webb gestured around the safe house. But we're both here anyway, trusting each other with secrets that could get us killed. He had a point. Morgan sat back down, her shoulder throbbing. We were extracting a civilian asset from Aleppo, she said quietly. Intelligence source with information about weapons trafficking. The operation was supposed to be clean, get in, grab the asset, get out. But someone leaked our position. We got ambushed 6 blocks from the extraction point. How many in your unit? 12 soldiers. Me. The asset. Morgan's hands clenched without her realizing. The ambush was coordinated. Multiple firing positions, RPGs, heavy machine guns. They were waiting for us. What did you do? My job. Kept the wounded alive while the team fought their way to secondary evac point. 3 soldiers down in the first 30 seconds. 5 more wounded. The asset took shrapnel to the leg. She paused, the memory sharp even after 3 years. I had to choose who to treat first. Who could wait? Who was too far gone? Triage. In theory, Morgan's voice went flat. In practice, it meant watching a 19-year-old kid bleed out while I worked on someone with better odds. Meant telling a specialist with a sucking chest wound to hold pressure himself because I had 4 other casualties screaming. Webb said nothing, letting her talk. We held that position for 43 minutes before extraction arrived. Lost 5 soldiers, 7 wounded. The asset survived. Morgan met his eyes. But the Syrian unit we were fighting? They lost 23 men. Collateral damage from the air support we called in. Turned out some of them were allies working undercover. We'd been fed bad intelligence. The whole operation was a setup. That's not your fault? Tell that to the review board. They needed someone to blame for the international incident. The dead allies, the blown intelligence. I was the ranking NCO who called in the airstrike. Made me an easy target. They discharged you for doing your job. They discharged me for embarrassing people who didn't want to admit their intelligence was compromised. Easier to blame the soldier than admit the system failed. Webb absorbed that. And now they want you back. Now they want results more than they want scapegoats. Morgan stood again. Your evidence, it stays protected. The families of Thompson and Rodriguez get justice, and the network that's been selling our military equipment to criminals gets burned to the ground. Is that a promise? It's a guarantee. She left before Webb could ask more questions she couldn't answer. The marshals escorted her back to the waiting car where Stone sat scrolling through his phone. Get what you needed, he asked. More than I expected. Morgan climbed into the passenger seat. Webb's thorough, brave, and marked for death the second the network realizes he's still alive. We're moving him to a new location tomorrow, somewhere even we won't know unless it's necessary. Good. They drove in silence for several miles before Stone spoke again. The debrief starts tomorrow at 0600. You'll meet your handler, get briefed on Mercy Cross Hospital's layout, staff hierarchy, security protocols. We'll build your employment history, create references, establish your legend. Who's the handler? Someone you know. Someone who worked the Syria operation. Stone glanced at her. Someone who's been tracking this network longer than anyone. Morgan's instincts prickled. Who? You'll find out tomorrow. The secure facility where Morgan spent the next 2 weeks felt more like a prison than a training center. Windowless briefing rooms, constant surveillance, guards at every checkpoint. She attended 12-hour sessions covering everything from Mercy Cross Hospital's administrative structure to advanced surveillance techniques. Her handler turned out to be someone she hadn't expected, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Vance, former intelligence officer who'd coordinated support for the Syria operation. Vance was 50-something, gray hair cut military short, eyes that missed nothing. Captain Hayes. Vance didn't smile when they met. I advocated for your discharge 3 years ago. Want to know why? Morgan kept her face neutral. I'm sure you'll tell me, because you were a liability, emotional, attached to your soldiers, made decisions based on sentiment rather than strategy. Vance pulled up a chair. I was wrong. That surprised Morgan enough to show on her face. You saved 12 men under impossible conditions, Vance continued, held a position against overwhelming force, made split-second triage decisions that kept soldiers alive long enough for extraction. The fact that the intelligence was compromised wasn't your fault. The fact that you survived and brought most of your team home was remarkable. Then why push for my discharge? Because sometimes doing the right thing in the field looks like the wrong thing in the briefing room. Politics demanded a scapegoat. I gave them one. Vance leaned forward. But I've been tracking the network behind that compromised intelligence ever since. 3 years of following money trails and encrypted communications and dead ends. You stumbling into Riverside General was the first real break we've had. Stumbling implies accident, doesn't it? Vance's expression didn't change. Funny how you ended up at a hospital we were already monitoring. How you happened to save a federal witness we'd embedded in Callahan's operation. How you exposed the entire Riverside network at exactly the right moment. Morgan's blood went cold. You placed me there. We suggested you might find work in Blackridge. Made sure your nursing credentials were accepted despite the gap in your employment history. Created opportunities for you to notice things that would trigger your instincts. Vance stood. But everything you did after that was your choice. Saving Webb. Fighting the assault team. Exposing Callahan. That was all you. You used me. We gave you a chance to matter again. There's a difference. Morgan wanted to be angry but couldn't quite manage it. Because Vance was right. Those 3 years at Riverside hadn't been wasted. She'd saved lives, stopped criminals, found purpose in the invisible work nobody else noticed. What's the real mission at Mercy Cross? Morgan asked. Vance pulled up files on a tablet, images of a sprawling hospital complex in Denver, modern buildings, underground parking, helipad on the roof. Mercy Cross Hospital is the largest medical facility in the network. 3,000 employees, 500 beds, trauma center, research wing. They move equipment worth millions through that facility every month. And the person running the network? We think they're on staff. Someone with high-level access. Someone who can authorize shipments and alter records without raising flags. Vance swiped to a new screen showing personnel files. We've narrowed it to 4 possibilities. All senior administrators, all with access to the systems we need. Morgan studied the faces. 2 men, 2 women. Ages ranging from 45 to 60. Clean backgrounds. Impressive credentials. How do I get close to them? You don't. Not directly. Vance pulled up an organizational chart. You'll be hired as a trauma nurse in the emergency department. Work there for 2 to 3 months, establishing your legend. During that time, you'll have access to supply systems, shipping records, staff communications. You'll look for the same patterns Webb identified at Riverside: discrepancies, unauthorized shipments, encrypted communications. What about backup? You'll have a partner embedded as a physician. He'll have administrative access you won't. Between both of you, we can map the entire operation. Who's the partner? Vance smiled without warmth. Dr. Marcus Reeves, former Army surgeon, worked black sites overseas, very good at playing whatever role the mission requires. Can I trust him? Can he trust you? Vance closed the tablet. You're both soldiers doing the same job. That'll have to be enough. Morgan spent the next 10 days memorizing hospital layouts, studying personnel files, and practicing her cover story. She became Morgan Hayes again, traveling nurse, 3 years at a small hospital in Montana, looking for new opportunities in a larger facility. Clean background, solid references. Nothing to suggest military training or combat experience. She met Dr. Marcus Reeves on her final day of training. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40. Dark hair going gray at the temples, surgeon's hands, eyes that assessed her like a patient on an operating table. Captain Hayes, he said, extending his hand. Just Morgan. We're civilians now, remember? Right. He didn't smile. I've read your file. Syria, Riverside. Impressive record of surviving situations that should have killed you. You're not exactly a desk jockey yourself. No. Reeves pulled up a chair. I've worked trauma centers in 3 war zones, patched up soldiers, insurgents, civilians, whoever needed it, lost count of how many times I've been shot at. Why'd you leave? Same reason you did. Politics, budget cuts. Watching good people die because someone in Washington decided funding was better spent elsewhere. His expression darkened. Then I found out the equipment we were begging for was being sold on the black market. That soldiers were dying because criminals were stealing medical supplies meant for field hospitals. Made me angry enough to do something about it. Morgan respected that. Anger was honest fuel. At Mercy Cross, I'm Dr. Reeves, emergency trauma surgeon, recently transferred from a hospital in Phoenix, he continued. My job is accessing administrative systems, reviewing financial records, and identifying shipping patterns. Your job is building relationships with staff, noticing operational details, and watching for behavioral red flags. We coordinate through Vance, daily reports, encrypted channels, no direct contact unless absolutely necessary. If someone's watching, we can't give them any reason to connect us. What if things go sideways? Reeves met her eyes. Then we improvise, just like Syria. The comparison made Morgan's chest tighten. Syria had been a disaster salvaged into survival. She didn't want history repeating itself. One more thing, Reeves said. If we identify the person running this network, we don't move without authorization. No heroics, no solo operations. We gather evidence and wait for Vance to coordinate federal intervention. And if waiting means more people die, then we live with that. Because cowboys get people killed. We're soldiers, not vigilantes. Morgan wanted to argue but couldn't. He was right. The mission was bigger than immediate satisfaction. Her final briefing with Vance covered contingency protocols, emergency extraction procedures, and rules of engagement. Standard operations manual with one critical addition. If your cover is blown, you have 3 options, Vance said. 1. Run. Get to the nearest safe house and wait for extraction. 2. Fight. Defend yourself using minimum necessary force and call for backup. 3. Disappear. Activate your ghost protocols and vanish completely. Which one do you recommend? Whichever keeps you alive long enough to finish the mission. Vance handed her a phone. This is your lifeline, encrypted. Untraceable. One button connects directly to me. Use it wisely. Morgan took the phone. Lighter than it looked. Felt like a weapon and a trap simultaneously. What if I find the person running the network but can't prove it? She asked. Then you become their nightmare. Make them paranoid. Force mistakes. Push until they expose themselves. Vance's expression hardened. But remember, these people killed federal marshals to protect their operation. They bombed a hospital. They compromised military intelligence that got soldiers killed. If they suspect you're a threat, they won't hesitate to eliminate you. Understood. I hope so. Because Morgan, Vance paused. This mission is voluntary. You can still walk away. No one would blame you. Morgan thought about Webb's evidence, about Thompson and Rodriguez dying to protect a witness, about 3 years of being invisible while corruption thrived. I'm not walking away. Then welcome back to the war. 2 days later, Morgan drove through Denver's morning traffic toward Mercy Cross Hospital with fake credentials, a manufactured employment history, and enough surveillance equipment hidden in her apartment to outfit a small intelligence operation. The hospital rose ahead like a gleaming fortress, all glass and steel and pristine landscaping. She parked in the employee lot and sat for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing steady. This was it. No more hiding, no more pretending to be harmless. Time to hunt. Morgan walked through the main entrance into a lobby that smelled like money. Marble floors, modern art on the walls. Everything designed to project competence and success. The Human Resources Office occupied the third floor, staffed by a cheerful woman named Rebecca, who processed Morgan's paperwork with practiced efficiency. "You'll love it here," Rebecca said, stapling forms. "Great benefits, excellent staff. Dr. Langford, our chief of emergency medicine, runs a tight ship, but he's fair." Morgan smiled. "Looking forward to it." "Your orientation starts tomorrow at 0800. First week is mostly training and shadowing. After that, you'll be assigned to regular shifts." Rebecca handed over an employee badge with Morgan's photo. "Welcome to Mercy Cross." The badge felt heavier than it should. Morgan spent the rest of the day familiarizing herself with the hospital layout. Emergency department on the first floor, surgery on the second, ICU on the third, administrative offices on the fourth, underground parking with service elevators, loading dock on the east side. Everything clean, organized, efficient. Too efficient, maybe. She spotted Dr. Reeves that evening in the hospital cafeteria. He sat alone reading medical journals, looking every bit the dedicated surgeon. Their eyes met for half a second. He showed no recognition. Morgan bought coffee and left. Professional distance. Smart play. Her apartment was a furnished studio 15 minutes from the hospital. Generic furniture. Blank walls. The kind of place nobody would remember. Morgan swept it for bugs out of habit, found nothing, and spent the evening reviewing personnel files on the tablet Vance had provided. Dr. David Langford, Chief of Emergency Medicine, 52 years old, 20 years at Mercy Cross. Decorated career. No obvious red flags. Linda Morrison, Chief Financial Officer, 48 years old, Harvard, MBA. Joined Mercy Cross 6 years ago. Financial background clean. Dr. Raymond Foster, Director of Surgery, 61 years old, former military surgeon, 30 years in medicine. Known for running experimental surgical programs. Karen Stiles, Vice President of Operations, 45 years old, logistics background, overseas experience with medical supply companies. 4 suspects. Any one of them could be running the network, or none of them, or all of them working together. Morgan's phone buzzed. Encrypted message from Vance. "First day tomorrow, eyes open, trust no one." She deleted the message and tried to sleep. Failed. Her shoulder ached where the bullet had torn through. Her mind wouldn't stop analyzing angles, calculating risks, preparing for disasters that might never come. Old habits. Orientation the next morning covered hospital policies, emergency procedures, and staff introductions. Morgan met 20 nurses, a dozen doctors, countless technicians. She smiled, made small talk, projected friendly competence while mentally cataloging everyone's behavior. Dr. Langford addressed the new hires personally. Tall man, confident bearing. Voice that commanded attention without raising volume. "Emergency medicine is controlled chaos," he said. "You'll see trauma, cardiac arrests, overdoses, accidents. Your job is saving lives under pressure. If you can't handle that, leave now." Nobody left. "Good." Langford's eyes swept the room. "We're a team here. Trust your colleagues. Follow protocol. And if you see something that doesn't look right, equipment missing, supplies misplaced, anything unusual, report it immediately." Morgan's instincts prickled. Was that normal administrator talk or something else? The first week passed in a blur of training shifts and equipment familiarization. Morgan worked alongside experienced nurses who taught her Mercy Cross protocols while gossiping about hospital politics. She learned that Dr. Langford was respected but distant, that the CFO Linda Morrison was rumored to be leaving for a private sector job, that Dr. Foster's experimental surgery program attracted patients from overseas willing to pay cash for procedures not approved in the United States. That last part made Morgan's radar ping. Experimental procedures, overseas patients, cash payments? She filed it away and kept watching. Dr. Reeves passed her in the hallway on day 9, didn't acknowledge her. But that evening, Morgan found an encrypted message waiting. "Foster's program is interesting. Patient records show procedures not logged in official surgical schedules." Digging deeper. Morgan deleted the message and continued her own investigation. She volunteered for inventory duty, tracking medical supplies through the hospital's digital system. Most transactions looked normal, but every few days shipments arrived marked as general medical supplies that didn't appear in any department's inventory. Someone was moving equipment through the hospital off the books. She documented everything: serial numbers, delivery times, shipping companies. built a database that mirrored what Webb had done at Riverside. 3 weeks into her assignment, Morgan was working a night shift when ambulances brought in a mass casualty incident, multi-car pileup on the interstate, 8 wounded, 2 critical. The emergency department erupted into controlled chaos. Morgan moved through it like she'd never left combat medicine. Triage, stabilization, rapid intervention. Dr. Langford watched her work with sharp attention. "Where'd you train?" he asked as she compressed a bleeder. "Montana, small hospital. Saw a lot of rural trauma." "You move like someone with military experience." Morgan's pulse kicked up, but her hand stayed steady. "Grew up with brothers. They taught me to handle pressure." Langford studied her for another moment, then nodded and moved to the next patient. Too close. She'd have to be more careful. The shift ended at 700. Morgan was heading to her car when someone grabbed her arm in the parking garage. She spun, ready to fight. Dr. Reeves held up his hands. "Easy. It's me." "What are you doing?" Morgan hissed, checking for witnesses. The garage was empty. "We need to talk, not over encrypted channels." Reeves gestured to his car. "Get in." Morgan hesitated, then complied. The vehicle was clean, windows tinted, no surveillance equipment visible. "Foster's experimental program is a front," Reeves said without preamble. "He's performing surgeries off the books using stolen military equipment. Patients pay cash, no insurance, no official records. I found evidence of at least 30 procedures in the past year." "What kind of procedures?" "Organ transplants, cosmetic surgery, experimental treatments, whatever people will pay for and can't get through legitimate channels." Reeves pulled up images on his phone. "But here's the interesting part. Some of the patients are foreign nationals, Chinese, Russian, Middle Eastern. They fly in, get surgery, and disappear." Morgan processed that. "Intelligence assets? Criminals?" "Both, probably. Foster doesn't ask questions as long as the money's good." "Does Langford know?" "I think so. Financial records show payments routed through shell companies that Morrison oversees. Langford approves the surgical schedules. Stiles handles logistics." Reeves met her eyes. "They're all connected. The whole senior staff is running this operation together." Morgan's stomach sank. Not one person. An entire conspiracy. "We need to report this to Vance." "Already did. She wants more proof before moving. Hard evidence linking all 4 suspects to specific illegal activities." Reeves closed his phone. "That means we keep digging, but carefully. If they suspect we're investigating, they'll come for us." "I know." They sat in silence for a moment. The parking garage felt too quiet, too exposed. "There's something else," Reeves said quietly. "I ran background checks on the 4 suspects. Foster has connections to the same criminal networks we were fighting in Syria. Same shell companies, same encrypted communication protocols." Morgan went cold. "You think he was involved in compromising our intelligence?" "I think it's possible, which means he might recognize you if he looks hard enough." "My records are sealed. So were Webb's. They still found him." Reeves started the car. "Watch your back, Morgan. These people have been playing this game longer than we have." She got out and walked to her own vehicle, skin prickling with the sensation of being watched. The hospital loomed above the parking garage, all those windows like eyes. Somewhere inside, 4 administrators were running a criminal empire, and they had no idea 2 soldiers were hunting them. Morgan drove home reviewing everything Reeves had told her. If Foster had ties to Syria, that meant the network's reach extended further than anyone suspected. Military hospitals, intelligence operations, international criminal organizations. How deep did this go? Her apartment felt wrong the moment she opened the door. Nothing obvious. Nothing she could point to specifically. But something had changed. Morgan drew the knife she kept strapped to her ankle and cleared each room with combat precision. Empty. No intruders. No signs of forced entry. But someone had been here. She found it in the bedroom, a single sheet of paper on her pillow, printed in block letters. "We know who you are, Captain Hayes. Stop looking or stop breathing." Morgan's hand stayed on the knife as she read the note again. The paper was standard office stock. No watermark. No fingerprints visible. Printed from any of 1,000 printers in the hospital. They knew. Somehow, despite the sealed records and manufactured background, someone had identified her. She pulled out the encrypted phone and called Vance. 2 rings. "Talk to me." They made me," Morgan said quietly. "Found a threat in my apartment. Same wording Webb got before they tried to kill him." Silence on the line. Then, pack essentials. Extraction team can be there in 30 minutes. No. Morgan. If I run now, we lose everything. They'll scatter, destroy evidence. We'll never get another shot at the top level. Morgan moved to the window, checking sight lines. Besides, if they wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. This is intimidation. They're testing to see if I break. Or they're giving you a chance to disappear before they make it permanent. Either way, running confirms I'm a threat. Staying makes them wonder if they're wrong. Morgan pulled the curtains closed. I need to know how they identified me, who talked, where the leak is. Vance's voice hardened. You think we have a mole? I think someone with access to sealed military records connected Morgan Hayes, the nurse, to Captain Hayes, the soldier. That's not a lucky guess. That's intelligence. I'll run internal checks, see who's accessed your file in the past month. Vance paused. But Morgan, if your cover's blown, the mission changes. You become a target instead of an investigator. Then I'll be a target who finishes the job. That's not how this works. It is now. Morgan ended the call before Vance could argue further. She spent the next hour sweeping her apartment for surveillance equipment. Found 3 devices, one in the smoke detector, one behind the bathroom mirror, one in the bedroom light fixture. Professional installation. High-grade hardware. Someone had been watching her for days, maybe weeks. Morgan left them in place. Removing them would confirm she'd found them. Better to control what they saw and heard. She texted Reeves on the encrypted channel. Compromised. They know. Continue mission. His response came back immediately. Extraction available. Use it. Negative. Proceeding as planned. You're making a mistake. Morgan didn't respond. She showered, changed clothes, and drove to the hospital for her next shift. The morning sun felt too bright. Traffic too normal. The world moving along oblivious to the war being fought in hospital corridors. Dr. Langford was waiting when she arrived at the ER. Morgan. My office. Her pulse kicked up, but her face stayed neutral. Problem? That's what I need to determine. She followed him through the department into a small administrative office. Langford closed the door and gestured to a chair. Morgan sat, hands relaxed in her lap, every muscle ready to move. You've been with us almost 4 weeks, Langford began. Your performance is exceptional. Almost too exceptional. I do my job. You do more than your job. Last week's mass casualty, you moved like someone with advanced trauma training. Military-level skills. His eyes never left her face. Your employment history says small hospital in Montana, but your capabilities suggest something else. Morgan held his gaze. I had good teachers. Who? Nurses who'd worked combat zones. They taught me techniques not in textbooks. Names? She gave him 3 names from her manufactured background. People who'd actually existed, actually worked at the Montana hospital, but had since retired or moved. Vance's team had been thorough. Langford wrote them down. I'll verify that. Feel free. He studied her for another long moment. We run background checks on all employees. Yours came back clean, but I've learned to trust my instincts. And my instincts say you're not who you claim to be. Then fire me. The bluntness seemed to surprise him. That's your response? You either trust me or you don't. If you don't, there's no point pretending. Morgan stood. I came here to work. To save lives. If that's not enough, I'll find another hospital. Langford's jaw tightened. He was testing her, looking for cracks. Morgan gave him nothing but calm indifference. Sit down, he said finally. She sat. I'm not firing you, but I am watching you, closely. Langford leaned back. Mercy Cross has strict protocols, strict hierarchies. Nurses who overstep boundaries don't last long here. Understood. Good. Get back to work. Morgan left the office with her heart hammering but her stride steady. First test passed, but Langford's suspicion was a ticking clock now. The shift was brutal. 3 traumas, 2 cardiac arrests, 1 pediatric emergency that left the entire staff emotionally wrecked. Morgan moved through it with mechanical precision, her mind half on the patients and half on calculating exit strategies. Dr. Reeves caught her eye during a lull. His expression was carefully neutral, but his shoulders carried tension she recognized. He'd been confronted, too. They were both under scrutiny now. Morgan volunteered for inventory duty that afternoon, needing access to the supply system. She logged in using her credentials and pulled shipping records for the past 6 months. The pattern Webb had identified at Riverside was here, too. Regular shipments marked as general medical supplies that never appeared in departmental inventories. She cross-referenced delivery times with staff schedules. Found that Stiles, the VP of Operations, personally signed for these shipments, always late at night, always when minimal staff was present. Morgan documented everything, uploading it to an encrypted server Vance had established. The evidence was building: financial records from Reeves, shipping manifests from Morgan, patient files showing off-book surgeries. But they still needed the connection to Syria, the proof that Foster's network had compromised military intelligence and gotten soldiers killed. That required access to Foster's personal files, his communications, his contacts. Morgan was reviewing surgical schedules when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, then noticed the area code, same as Webb's safe house. She stepped into an empty supply closet and answered. "Captain Hayes." The voice was male, unfamiliar, professionally neutral. "This is Marshal Davidson. We have a situation with Lieutenant Webb." Morgan's blood went cold. "What kind of situation?" "He's missing. Disappeared from protective custody 6 hours ago. No sign of forced entry, no struggle. Security footage shows him leaving voluntarily with an unidentified woman. Someone got to him. That's our assessment. We're treating this as a hostile extraction." Davidson paused. "He had your contact information in his personal effects. Any idea where he might go?" Morgan thought fast. Webb was smart, cautious, paranoid after months of being hunted. If he'd left voluntarily, either he was coerced or he thought he was meeting someone he could trust. "Check his evidence files," Morgan said. "See if there are any locations mentioned repeatedly. Safe houses, storage facilities, anywhere he might have backup documentation." "Already on it. But Hayes, whoever took him knows about the investigation. That means they know about you." "I'm aware." "Watch your back. These people don't leave loose ends." The call ended. Morgan leaned against the shelving, mind racing. Webb's disappearance wasn't random. Someone inside the network had ordered it. Someone who knew he was the key witness. Someone who was tying up loose ends before federal intervention came crashing down. Morgan found Reeves in the physician's lounge that evening. Empty, except for the two of them. She filled him in quickly. "They're accelerating," Reeves said. "Cleaning house before we can build an airtight case. Which means we're running out of time. Or they're running scared." Reeves pulled up his tablet. "I've been analyzing Foster's surgical schedule. He has a procedure scheduled for tomorrow night, off the books. Patient listed only as private client, cash payment, $200,000. For what kind of surgery? Doesn't say, but that price tag suggests something major, organ transplant maybe, or experimental procedure he can't perform legally." Morgan's instincts fired. "We need to see who that patient is." "How? The surgery's in a restricted wing, limited access, heavy security." "Then we get creative." Morgan thought it through. "I volunteer for surgical support. Tell them I'm interested in OR training. They're always short-staffed at night." "That's risky. If Foster recognizes you." "He won't. He's a surgeon focused on his patient. I'm just another nurse in scrubs and a mask." Morgan met his eyes. "But you'll be in that OR, too, as the anesthesiologist." Reeves blinked. "I'm a trauma surgeon, not an anesthesiologist." "You did anesthesia rotations in medical school. It's in your file." "That was 15 years ago." "Then it'll come back to you." Morgan's voice hardened. "We need someone in that room documenting everything. Patient identity, procedure details, equipment used. That's evidence Vance can use to coordinate federal raids across the entire network." Reeves was quiet for a long moment. "If this goes wrong, we both die. You know that, right? If we do nothing, Webb dies. Thompson and Rodriguez died for nothing, and the network keeps operating." Morgan stood. "I didn't come back to play it safe." "No," Reeves said quietly. "You came back because you're still that soldier who held a position against impossible odds." "Is that a compliment or criticism?" "Both." Morgan requested OR training the next morning. The charge nurse seemed surprised but approved it. Extra hands were always needed, especially for late-night procedures when regular staff wanted to be home. Reeves used his seniority to insert himself into Foster's surgical schedule, claiming interest in the experimental techniques. Foster's assistant hesitated but ultimately agreed. The operation was scheduled for 2,200 hours. Morgan spent the day preparing mentally, reviewing surgical procedures, studying Foster's background, memorizing every detail of the restricted wing's layout. Vance sent an encrypted message at 1800. Webb's vehicle found abandoned near the Wyoming border. Blood in the trunk. No body recovered yet. Morgan deleted the message with shaking hands. Webb had survived federal protection only to be murdered covering his tracks. The network was cleaning house aggressively now, which meant Morgan and Reeves were next on the list. She arrived at the hospital at 2100, scrubbed in, and met the surgical team. Foster was there, masked and gowned, reviewing imaging scans. Two other surgeons Morgan didn't recognize, a scrub nurse named Jennifer, and Reeves, looking convincingly focused on anesthesia equipment. The patient was wheeled in at 2145. Male, middle-aged, features obscured by pre-op sedation, but Morgan caught a glimpse of tattoos on his forearm, Cyrillic script, Russian. Foster began without preamble. This is an experimental pancreatic procedure, highly technical. Everyone follows my lead exactly. No deviations. The team nodded. Morgan took her position as surgical assistant, hands steady despite her racing pulse. Reeves administered anesthesia and nodded. Patients under, vitals stable. Foster made the first incision with practiced precision. Morgan watched him work, noting the equipment he used, specialized instruments that shouldn't have been available outside military research facilities. Stolen equipment, just like Webb's evidence suggested. The surgery progressed with textbook efficiency. Foster moved through the procedure, explaining nothing, expecting his team to anticipate his needs. Morgan supplied instruments and suction, playing the role of competent but unremarkable assistant. 2 hours in, Foster paused to review imaging. "Interesting," he murmured. The pancreatic scarring suggests previous trauma. Military-grade explosive injury, perhaps. Morgan's instincts screamed. She glanced at the patient's face again. Older than she'd first thought. Scarred. Hard features even in sedation. Foster continued working. "We'll need to navigate around the damaged tissue. Marcus, increase sedation slightly. I don't want any involuntary responses during the delicate phase." Reeves complied. Increasing now. Morgan used the momentary distraction to photograph the patient's face with a camera hidden in her scrub pocket. 3 quick shots. Evidence. The surgery stretched past midnight. Morgan's feet ached. Her shoulder throbbed where the old bullet wound had healed. But she stayed focused, watching everything, documenting mentally. Foster was brilliant, she had to admit. His technique was flawless, the kind of surgeon who could work miracles in the right circumstances. Pity he'd chosen to work them for criminals. At 0140, Foster closed the final suture. "Excellent work, everyone. Patient recovery will be in the private wing. No official records. Standard protocol." The team dispersed. Morgan helped transfer the patient to recovery, then disappeared to the locker room. She had maybe 10 minutes before someone noticed her absence. She pulled out the encrypted phone and sent the photos to Vance with a message. "Patient from Foster's surgery. Russian national. Possible military background. Need facial recognition." The response came back in 90 seconds. "Stand by." Morgan changed out of surgical scrubs, heart pounding. She'd gotten the evidence. Now she just needed to get out alive. She was heading for the parking garage when someone grabbed her from behind. Morgan reacted instantly, elbow to the ribs, foot stomp, reversal that put her attacker against the wall with her forearm across his throat. Dr. Reeves gasped for air. "Jesus, Morgan, it's me!" She released him, adrenaline still screaming. "Don't grab me like that." "Noted." Reeves rubbed his throat. "We have a problem. Foster's asking about you. Wants to know who authorized you for that surgery." "What did you tell him?" "That I didn't know. That I assumed the charge nurse cleared it. But he's suspicious. Reviewing your file right now." Morgan cursed. "How long do we have?" "Hours? Maybe less." Reeves glanced around the empty hallway. "Vance needs to move now. Coordinate federal intervention before Foster connects the dots." Morgan's phone buzzed. Message from Vance. "Patient ID confirmed. Mikhail Volkov. Former Russian intelligence. Wanted for war crimes in 3 countries. Connected to Syrian weapons trafficking." Morgan showed Reeves the screen. His face went pale. "That's the connection," he said. "Foster's been treating war criminals, using stolen military equipment to save people who should be in prison. Or dead." Another message from Vance. "Federal teams mobilizing. Simultaneous raids on Mercy Cross and 3 other hospitals in the network. ETA 6 hours. Get out now. 6 hours." That was cutting it close. Morgan typed back, "Webb is dead. They're cleaning house. Acceleration needed. Working on it. Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage." Morgan pocketed the phone. "We need to secure Foster's files before they're destroyed. Patient records, communications, everything." Reeves stared at her. You heard Vance. We're supposed to extract. In 6 hours, Foster will have wiped every drive and burned every document. We'll have photos and suspicions, but no hard proof. Morgan started walking toward the administrative wing. I didn't survive Syria to lose this operation because we played it safe. Morgan, you want to help or get out of my way? Reeves hesitated, then followed. This is insane. Probably. Foster's office was on the 4th floor. Executive suite. After-hours security required badge access and PIN code. Morgan pulled out her employee badge, knowing it wouldn't work for this level. Reeves pulled out his. Physicians have broader access, but this will log my entry. Do it. He swiped the badge. The light turned green. They slipped inside. Foster's office was exactly what Morgan expected. Expensive furniture, medical journals, framed credentials on the walls. A desktop computer sat dark on the mahogany desk. Cover the door, Morgan said. Let me know if anyone's coming. She sat at Foster's computer and powered it on. Password protected. She pulled out a USB drive Vance had provided, military-grade hacking software that could bypass most civilian security. The software ran. 30 seconds. 60. The screen flickered and opened. Morgan was in. She navigated to Foster's email, downloading everything to the USB drive. Patient files next. Communications. Financial records. Years of documentation. How long? Reeves asked from the door, voice tight. 2 minutes. The download bar crawled forward. 70%. 80. Footsteps in the hallway outside. Someone's coming, Reeves hissed. 90%. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Morgan held her breath. The download finished. She yanked the USB drive and pocketed it just as the door opened. Dr. Langford stood in the doorway with 2 security guards. I thought I'd find you here, Langford said quietly. Step away from the computer, Morgan. She stood slowly, hands visible. Reeves moved beside her, face pale. You're making a mistake, Morgan said. Am I? Langford stepped inside. Former Army Captain Morgan Hayes, discharged after the Syria operation. Declared mentally unfit. Embedded at Riverside General where you exposed Dr. Callahan's trafficking operation. He smiled without warmth. Did you really think we wouldn't figure it out? How long have you known? Since your 2nd week. We ran deeper background checks after Callahan's arrest, found the sealed records, made connections. Langford gestured to the security guards. Detain them both. The guards moved forward. Morgan calculated odds. 2 armed security, Langford unarmed, Reeves combat-trained but out of practice. Possible to fight through but casualties likely. She raised her hands. We're federal investigators. Detaining us is obstruction. You're trespassers accessing private files without authorization. Langford's expression hardened. The federal government has no jurisdiction here until they present warrants, which they won't have for another 6 hours. He knew. Somehow, he knew the raid timeline. Who told you? Morgan asked. Does it matter? Langford pulled out his phone. Dr. Foster, we have a situation. The investigators are in your office. Morgan's mind raced. If Foster came here, if they were held until the network could relocate evidence and scatter key personnel, the entire operation collapsed. She met Reeves's eyes, saw the same calculation happening. He moved first, grabbed the nearest guard's weapon, twisted it free, drove his shoulder into the man's chest. Morgan followed, sweeping Langford's legs, driving him to the floor. The second guard drew his weapon. Morgan kicked it from his hand, caught it before it hit the ground, and leveled it at Langford. Tell Foster we're gone, she said, or I put a bullet through your knee and disappear before anyone responds. Langford's face went red. You're finished, both of you. Maybe, but you're going to prison either way. Morgan backed toward the door, weapon steady. Reeves, move. They ran. Down the corridor, through the stairwell. Alarms started shrieking behind them. Morgan's shoulder screamed, but she pushed through it. The parking garage was 50 yards ahead, then 30, 20. Armed security appeared from the elevator. 4 men, professional stance, military bearing, not hospital security. Private contractors. Morgan and Reeves dove behind a concrete pillar as bullets chewed into the wall. Return fire came in controlled bursts. 3-round groups, textbook suppression. These aren't rent-a-cops, Reeves gasped. No kidding. Morgan checked the confiscated weapon. 15 rounds. 1 spare magazine on the guard's belt that she'd grabbed during the scuffle. Not enough for a sustained fight. More footsteps echoing, reinforcements coming. "We need extraction now," Reeves said. Morgan pulled out the encrypted phone, called Vance. "We're blown," Morgan said when Vance answered. "Armed contractors. Need immediate evac." "I've got a team 15 minutes out." "We don't have 15 minutes." Gunfire punctuated the statement. Concrete dust filled the air. "Then hold position and—" Vance's voice cut off. The line went dead. Morgan stared at the phone. No signal. They'd killed the cell towers. No calls in or out. "We're on our own," she said. Reeves checked his weapon. 9 rounds. "Any brilliant ideas?" Morgan scanned their position. Underground parking garage. Multiple exits. Heavy concrete providing decent cover. Maybe 24 civilians' cars scattered throughout. "We move fast," she said. "Use the vehicles for cover. Get to street level. Disappear into the city before they lock down the perimeter." "That's not a plan. That's desperation." "You have something better?" He didn't. They moved, low and fast, using cars as shields. Morgan fired twice to keep the contractors honest. Center mass shots that forced them to duck. 10 yards, 20. The exit ramp was ahead. Then the garage entrance exploded inward. A black SUV roared down the ramp, tires shrieking. It skidded to a stop between Morgan and the contractors. The passenger door flew open. "Get in!" Lieutenant Colonel Vance shouted from the driver's seat. Morgan didn't question it. She and Reeves dove into the vehicle. Vance floored the accelerator before the doors closed. Bullets shattered the rear window. Morgan returned fire through the broken glass, buying them seconds. The SUV launched up the exit ramp at dangerous speed, scraped the sides, burst onto street level. Traffic was light at 300, but Vance drove like it was a war zone, cutting through intersections, ignoring signals, putting distance between them and the hospital. "How did you—" Morgan started. "Cell towers weren't jammed. They were monitoring communications. I heard your call drop and mobilized immediately." Vance took a hard corner. "Where's the evidence?" Morgan pulled out the USB drive. Foster's complete files. Everything. "Good. Because the federal raids just got moved up. Teams are hitting all 4 hospitals in 90 minutes. What changed?" "Webb's body was found an hour ago. Tortured before they killed him. Left him in a location they knew we'd find." Vance's expression was granite. "That was a message. They're declaring war. We're responding in kind." Morgan's chest tightened. Webb had died protecting the investigation, just like Thompson and Rodriguez. "Volkov?" she asked. "The patient from Foster's surgery? Already in federal custody, arrested at the hospital 30 minutes ago. He's cooperating in exchange for a reduced sentence." Vance glanced at Morgan. "Your photos gave us enough to move immediately. Volkov confirmed Foster's been treating wanted criminals for years, performing illegal procedures, using stolen military equipment. Foster will run. Not if we're fast enough." They drove to a nondescript building in an industrial district. Federal agents swarmed the entrance. Vance led Morgan and Reeves inside to a command center that looked like something from a military operation. Screens showed surveillance feeds from Mercy Cross Hospital. Federal teams staging at rally points. Tactical maps with assault routes marked in red. A gray-haired man in a suit approached. "Colonel Vance, these are your investigators?" "Captain Hayes, Dr. Reeves," Vance gestured to the man. "Assistant Director Warren, FBI." Warren studied them both. "Your evidence better be solid. We're hitting 4 hospitals simultaneously. If this goes wrong, careers end." Morgan handed him the USB drive. Foster's complete files, patient records showing illegal procedures, communications with criminal networks, financial records proving military equipment theft. Everything you need. Warren plugged the drive into a computer. Files populated across the screen. His expression shifted from skepticism to grim satisfaction. "This is good," he said. "Very good." "What about Langford, Morrison, and Stiles?" Morgan asked. "All under surveillance. We'll arrest them simultaneously with the raid." Warren pulled up footage of Foster's office. Empty. "But Foster's disappeared. Left the hospital 20 minutes ago. Current location unknown." Morgan's instincts fired. He wouldn't run without critical evidence, patient records, communications, something too valuable to leave behind. "Everything's on his computer," Warren said, "which you just copied." "No, Foster's too smart for that. He'll have backup documentation somewhere off-site, insurance in case things went wrong." Morgan thought it through. Storage facility, safe house, somewhere he could access quickly but wouldn't be connected to him officially. Vance pulled up financial records. Foster owns 3 properties in the Denver area: residence, mountain cabin, and a commercial unit in an industrial park. The industrial unit, Morgan said immediately. That's where he'd keep sensitive material. Warren made a call. Get me a tactical team to this address, now. 20 minutes later, Morgan sat in an unmarked vehicle watching the industrial park through binoculars. The unit Foster owned was a nondescript warehouse, no windows, single entrance. A black sedan was parked outside. That's Foster's vehicle, Reeves said from the back seat. Tactical team leader approached Vance's window. We're ready to breach on your order. Wait, Morgan said. If Foster's in there destroying evidence, breaching now alerts him. He'll burn everything before you get inside. What do you suggest? Morgan looked at the warehouse. Single entrance, no visible security. Foster inside alone, probably panicking, making mistakes. Let me go in first, she said. Unarmed. Tell him I want a deal. Buy time for your team to get in position. Warren shook his head. Absolutely not. Foster's connected to Webb's murder. He's dangerous. He's a surgeon, not a soldier. And he knows I have evidence that could destroy him. He'll want to negotiate. Morgan met Warren's eyes. Give me 5 minutes. If I can't talk him into surrendering, your team goes in hard. Warren looked at Vance. She nodded slowly. 5 minutes, Warren said. Then we breach whether you're clear or not. Morgan climbed out of the vehicle. No weapon, no backup. Just her and whatever remained of Foster's rationality. She walked to the warehouse entrance and knocked. Silence. She knocked again. Dr. Foster, it's Morgan Hayes. I know you're in there. I want to talk. More silence. Then locks clicking. The door opened 6 inches. Foster's face appeared in the gap, eyes wild, sweat beading his forehead. You shouldn't have come here, he said. Neither should you, but here we are. Morgan kept her hands visible. Federal agents are surrounding this building. You have maybe 3 minutes before they breach. Talk to me and maybe we both walk out alive. Foster's laugh was bitter. You think I don't know how this ends? I'm going to prison. My career's over. Everything I built is gone. Then make it mean something. Tell the truth. Help us dismantle the network completely. Why would I do that? Because Webb is dead. Thompson and Rodriguez are dead. Soldiers in Syria died because this network compromised military intelligence. Morgan's voice hardened. You have a chance to do one decent thing before it's over. Don't waste it. Foster stared at her for a long moment. Then he opened the door wider. The warehouse interior was exactly what Morgan expected. Stacks of boxes, filing cabinets, computer equipment. Foster had been in the middle of destroying hard drives, papers scattered everywhere. I never wanted anyone to die, Foster said quietly. I just wanted to practice medicine, to help people no one else would help. You helped war criminals. I helped people who needed surgery and couldn't get it through legitimate channels. Some of them were criminals. Some were just desperate. He gestured to the boxes. 20 years of documentation, every patient I ever treated, every procedure I couldn't perform legally, all of it about to burn. Don't, Morgan said. Those records are evidence, but they're also the only way to hold everyone in the network accountable. And you think that makes it better? That turning over everything absolves me? No, but it's a start. Foster's hand moved to his jacket. Morgan tensed, ready to fight. He pulled out a flash drive. Everything's backed up here. Financial records, communications, patient files, the entire network's operations for 7 years. He held it out. Morgan took it slowly. Why are you giving this to me? Because you were right. What we did in Syria got soldiers killed. Not directly, not intentionally, but the intelligence we compromised, the weapons we moved, it created conditions that led to that ambush. Foster's voice cracked. I never knew you were one of the soldiers who survived it, but knowing that now, I can't let more people die protecting my secrets. Morgan pocketed the flash drive. Come outside. Surrender peacefully. It'll go easier. Will it? Foster smiled without humor. I treated Mikhail Volkov. Do you know what he did in Syria? What he's wanted for? War crimes. Mass graves. Chemical weapons. Torture. I saved the life of a man who killed children. Foster's eyes glistened. How do I come back from that? You don't. But you can stop it from continuing. Foster nodded slowly, started toward the door. Then he pulled a pistol from his waistband. Morgan dove sideways as the shot rang out, felt the bullet pass so close it burned her cheek. But Foster hadn't aimed at her. He'd aimed at himself. The gunshot echoed. Foster dropped. Morgan scrambled forward, pressing her hands to the wound in his chest. Exit wound in his back. Through and through, massive bleeding. "Stay with me," she shouted, applying pressure. Medical training overriding everything else. The warehouse door exploded inward. Tactical teams swarmed in, weapons raised. "Medic!" Morgan yelled. "I need a medic now!" They appeared with a trauma kit, took over. Morgan stepped back, hands covered in Foster's blood, watching them work. But she could see it in their faces. The wound was too severe, the bleeding too fast. Foster was dying. His eyes found hers. "The network doesn't end with us. There's someone else, someone we answer to. Check the drive." His voice faded. The medics tried for another 90 seconds before calling it. Time of death, 0347. Morgan stood in the warehouse surrounded by federal agents and burning evidence and a dead man's confession. The flash drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Hayes." Warren appeared beside her. "The drive. What's on it?" She handed it over with numb fingers. Everything Foster promised. But he said something before he died about someone else, someone above him in the network. Warren's expression darkened. "We'll analyze it immediately." The tactical teams secured the warehouse, cataloged evidence, photographed everything. Morgan sat on the back of an ambulance while a paramedic checked her for injuries, minor burns from the gunshot, otherwise intact. Vance approached with her phone. Federal teams hit all 4 hospitals simultaneously. Langford, Morrison, and Stiles are in custody. We've arrested 37 people connected to the network, seized millions in equipment and records. And the person Foster mentioned? Analyzing the drive now. If there's evidence of someone higher up, we'll find it. Morgan nodded numbly. She'd spent 3 years trying to disappear, 1 month infiltrating Mercy Cross, hours running for her life, and it had ended with a surgeon choosing death over accountability. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Webb's family wants to meet you. Marshall Davidson says you're the one who tried to finish what he started. Tomorrow, 1400 hours. Address attached." Morgan stared at the message. Webb's family. The people who'd lost him to this network. She typed back. "I'll be there." Reeves appeared looking exhausted. "Federal agents want our full statements. Could take hours." "Then we give them hours." Morgan stood, ignoring her protesting shoulder. "This doesn't end until every person connected to the network is behind bars." "Foster said there was someone else. You believe him?" "He was dying. Had no reason to lie." They spent the next 6 hours in debriefings. Morgan recounted every detail. The infiltration, the surveillance, the surgical observation, the escape. Federal prosecutors recorded everything, building cases that would take months to fully prosecute. Dawn broke over Denver. Morgan walked out of the federal building into cold morning air. News helicopters circled overhead. Camera crews camped outside Mercy Cross Hospital. The story was already breaking. Federal raids, multiple arrests, military equipment thefts spanning 7 years. Her phone rang. "Vance." "Turn on the news," Vance said. Morgan found a television in a coffee shop across the street. Every channel was covering the story. But one detail kept repeating across the bottom of the screen. "Breaking. Unidentified whistleblower exposes military trafficking network." "They're keeping your name out of it," Vance said. "For now. But Morgan, this is big. Congressional oversight committees want to investigate. Pentagon's launching internal reviews. People are demanding accountability." "Good. There's something else. We analyzed Foster's drive, found encrypted communications with someone using the handle Architect. Financial records show this person authorized payments worth $18 million, coordinated between all 4 hospitals, but we can't identify them." Morgan's blood went cold. "How is that possible?" "They're careful. Uses rotating IP addresses, encrypted channels, dead drops for communications. We're working with NSA to trace the digital footprint, but it'll take time." "How much time?" "Weeks, maybe months." "The Architect. Someone smart enough to stay hidden while running a network worth millions. Someone still free while everyone beneath them burned." "I want in on that investigation," Morgan said. "You've done enough. The Army's offering full reinstatement, clean record, promotion. You can write your ticket." "I don't want a promotion. I want the Architect." Vance was quiet for a moment. "You can't hunt them alone, Morgan. This isn't Syria. This is federal jurisdiction." "Then make me federal jurisdiction. Deputize me. Hire me as a contractor. I don't care what the paperwork says, but I'm not walking away while the person who ordered Webb's death is still breathing." Another pause, then, "I'll see what I can do, But Morgan, be careful. The architect knows we're looking now. That makes them desperate, and desperate people do terrible things. The call ended. Morgan stood on the street corner watching the news cycle explode around her. 37 arrests, millions in seized equipment, a network exposed. But the person who built it all was still out there, still watching, still planning. Her encrypted phone buzzed one more time. Unknown sender. The message made her blood freeze. Well played, Captain Hayes, but this is far from over. The architect doesn't forget, and neither should you. Morgan stared at the message until the screen went dark. The architect knew her name, knew she was hunting them, had just announced they were hunting her back. She forwarded the message to Vance and deleted it. The coffee shop felt too exposed suddenly. Too many windows. Too many people who could be watching. Her phone rang immediately. That message came from a burner phone activated 3 minutes ago in downtown Denver, Vance said without preamble. Already offline. Untraceable. They're close. Or they want you to think they're close. Either way, you're compromised. I'm pulling you into protective custody until... No. Morgan stepped outside into the cold morning. Protective custody didn't save Webb. Won't save me. The architect wants me scared and hiding. I'm done giving them what they want. Then what's your play? Morgan thought fast. The architect had resources, connections, money, but they just lost 4 hospitals, dozens of operatives, and millions in equipment. They were wounded. Dangerous, but vulnerable. They made a mistake, Morgan said. Sending that message confirms they're rattled. People who are winning don't waste time on threats. Or they're baiting you. Maybe, but bait works both ways. Morgan hailed a cab. I'm meeting Webb's family at 1400. After that, I want access to everything on Foster's Drive. Every communication with the architect. Every transaction. Every pattern. The FBI is already analyzing. I don't care what the FBI is doing. I need to see it myself. Morgan climbed into the cab, gave the driver an address 3 blocks from her apartment. Foster said the network doesn't end with the people we arrested. That means there are more players, more hospitals, more operations we haven't found yet. Vance was quiet for a moment. I'll get you access. But Morgan, the architect killed Webb, killed federal marshals. They won't hesitate to kill you. I'm counting on them trying. The cab dropped her at a convenience store. Morgan went inside, bought a prepaid phone, and walked the remaining blocks to her apartment on foot, scanning every car, every face, every window. The apartment hadn't been disturbed since she'd left. The surveillance equipment she'd found days ago was still in place. Morgan left it there and packed a go-bag. Clothes, documents, the knife she kept strapped to her ankle, and a Glock 19 Vance had provided during training. She wouldn't be unarmed again. The meeting with Webb's family was at a small park in a residential neighborhood. Morgan arrived early, scoped the area, identified 3 exit routes and 2 choke points before Webb's widow appeared with their teenage daughter. Sarah Webb was smaller than Morgan expected. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that had cried too much recently. The daughter, maybe 16, had her father's features and her mother's devastated expression. Mrs. Webb? Morgan extended her hand. I'm Morgan Hayes. Sarah's handshake was firm despite the grief. Marshal Davidson said you were with Marcus when he gave his statement, that you tried to protect him. I did what I could. It wasn't enough. He knew the risks. Sarah's voice cracked slightly. Before he went into protective custody, he told me this might happen, that the people he was exposing wouldn't stop until he was silenced. The daughter, Emma, Morgan remembered from the file, spoke quietly. Did he die for nothing? The question hit harder than any bullet. Morgan met the girl's eyes. No. Your father's evidence led to 37 arrests. We shut down 4 hospitals moving illegal equipment, seized millions in stolen supplies. Federal prosecutors are building cases that'll put these people away for decades. Morgan paused. He died a hero. That doesn't make it hurt less, but it's the truth. Sarah wiped her eyes. The marshal said you're still hunting the person who ordered Marcus killed. I am. Why? You could walk away. You exposed the network. Isn't that enough? Morgan thought about Syria, about 12 soldiers she'd kept alive through an ambush, about 3 years of being invisible while criminals operated freely, about Webb dying alone after months of doing the right thing. No, she said simply. It's not enough. Emma looked at her mother, then back to Morgan. My dad said the person running the network was called the architect. That they were smart enough to hide behind everyone else. Do you know who they are? Not yet, but I will. Promise? Morgan shouldn't have. Promises were dangerous. But looking at this girl who'd lost her father to criminals, she couldn't help herself. I promise. Sarah handed Morgan a small box. Marcus left this for whoever finished his investigation. Said if anything happened to him, it should go to the person who cared enough to see it through. Inside was Webb's military dog tags and a handwritten note on a torn piece of paper. Don't stop until they're all gone. Every last one. Marcus Webb. Morgan's throat tightened. She pocketed the tags and the note. Thank you for meeting me, Sarah said. I needed to see the person Marcus trusted with his evidence. Needed to know someone was still fighting. They left shortly after. Morgan watched them drive away, then sat on the park bench for another 20 minutes, making sure nobody had followed them. Her encrypted phone buzzed. Message from Vance. FBI finished preliminary analysis of Foster's drive. You're cleared to review at the federal building. 1600 hours. Morgan checked her watch. 2 hours. She spent them at a shooting range, putting rounds through paper targets, reacquainting herself with the Glock's weight and recoil. Muscle memory came back fast. By the time she left, her groupings were tight and her hands steady. The federal building was a fortress of concrete and security checkpoints. Morgan went through 3 separate screenings before reaching the secure analysis room where Vance waited with Assistant Director Warren and 2 FBI technical specialists. Captain Hayes, Warren gestured to a workstation. Everything from Foster's drive is loaded here. Financial records, communications, patient files, 7 years of documentation. Morgan sat down and started reading. The scope of the operation was staggering. Foster's network had moved equipment worth over $40 million through hospitals in Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, performed hundreds of illegal procedures, treated dozens of wanted criminals. But the communications with the architect were sparse, encrypted messages sent through anonymous channels, instructions without explanation, payment authorizations without names. The architect never revealed personal information, one of the FBI specialists said. Never used the same communication method twice. We're working with NSA to trace the digital signatures, but whoever this is knows how to stay invisible. Morgan scrolled through the messages. Most were logistical, shipment schedules, patient arrivals, payment confirmations. But one caught her attention. Architect to Foster, dated 3 months ago. Syria compromise resolved. Asset eliminated. Continue operations. Morgan's blood went cold. What asset? The specialist pulled up related files. We think it's referring to the intelligence source who was feeding information about military supply routes in Syria, the one whose intelligence got compromised during your extraction operation. They killed the source? Appears so. 3 months ago. Body was never recovered, but local assets confirmed the death. Morgan's hands clenched. The civilian asset she'd extracted in Syria, the one who'd survived the ambush because she'd kept him alive through 43 minutes of hell, had been murdered 3 months ago to cover the architect's tracks. There's more, Warren said. We cross-referenced the architect's financial transactions with known shell companies. Found connections to a defense contractor called Redstone Solutions. They supply medical equipment to military hospitals worldwide. And they're legitimate? On paper. But their shipping manifests show discrepancies. Equipment ordered but never delivered. Medications disappearing in transit. The same patterns Webb identified. Vance leaned forward. Redstone Solutions is headquartered in Washington, D.C. Board of directors include several former Pentagon officials. Major government contracts. They move hundreds of millions in medical supplies annually. Morgan processed that. The architect isn't just running a criminal network. They're embedded in a legitimate defense contractor, using it as cover to move stolen equipment while maintaining official authorization. That's our theory, Warren said. But Redstone has 1,200 employees. Any one of them could be the architect. We need more than theory to get search warrants. What about the board of directors? Morgan asked. Who has final authority over shipping and contracts? The specialist pulled up corporate records. 5 board members. CEO is Richard Brennan, former Army colonel. CFO is Jennifer Marks, Harvard MBA. COO is Thomas Ashford, logistics specialist. Plus 2 non-executive members, Dr. Patricia Holland and General Marcus Reeves. Morgan's heart stopped. General Marcus Reeves? Related to Dr. Marcus Reeves, who infiltrated Mercy Cross with me? Warren checked the file. Son, Dr. Reeves is General Reeves's only child. The room went silent. Morgan's mind raced. Reeves had been her partner, had fought beside her, had been there when Foster died. If his father was on Redstone's board, that meant, "Where is Dr. Reeves now?" she asked quietly. Vance pulled out her phone, made a call. Her expression darkened. "He's not responding. Last check-in was 6 hours ago." "Find him," Morgan said. "Now." Federal agents mobilized immediately. Morgan sat at the workstation pulling up everything she could find on General Marcus Reeves. Decorated career, 30 years in military medicine, retired 5 years ago, joined Redstone Solutions as a non-executive board member shortly after. His financial records showed regular payments from Redstone, consulting fees, board compensation, stock options, all perfectly legal. But cross-referencing the dates of those payments with the architect's financial transactions showed suspicious overlap. Morgan's encrypted phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. "Looking for your partner? He's with me. Come alone if you want him alive. Address attached." She showed it to Vance. "It's a trap, obviously." Morgan stood. "Which is why I'm going." "Absolutely not. They have Reeves. If his father is the architect, they're using him as leverage, either to force cooperation or to eliminate a witness." Morgan checked her weapon. "I'm not leaving him." Warren stepped forward. "We can send tactical teams, surround the location, extract him safely." And the architect disappears the second they see federal response. "This only works if I go alone." Morgan met his eyes. "But I won't actually be alone. You'll have teams staged nearby. I wear a wire. The second I confirm the architect's identity, you move in." Vance and Warren exchanged looks. "This is insane," Vance said. "It's our only shot." Warren pulled up the address from the message. An abandoned warehouse in an industrial district. "We can have teams in position in 30 minutes. Then we move in 40. Morgan headed for the door. "Get me a wire and a backup weapon. And if I'm not out in 1 hour, you breach regardless." The next 30 minutes were a blur of preparation. Morgan got fitted with a nearly invisible microphone and tracker, backup weapon strapped to her ankle, Kevlar vest under her jacket. Federal tactical teams staged at 3 positions around the warehouse. Vance walked her to the vehicle. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." "Why? Because of Webb? Because of Syria? You've already done more than anyone could expect." Morgan thought about the note in her pocket, about Emma Webb's question, about 3 years of hiding from who she really was. "Because I'm tired of criminals thinking they're smarter than everyone else, tired of good people dying while the architects of violence stay safe." She met Vance's eyes. "I didn't survive Syria to lose now." Vance handed her a phone. "Direct line to tactical command. 1 word, architect, and they breach immediately." Morgan pocketed it and drove toward the warehouse alone. The industrial district was abandoned, crumbling buildings, broken windows, graffiti-covered walls, perfect place for an ambush. Morgan parked outside the warehouse and approached on foot. The front door was unlocked. She pushed it open slowly, weapon drawn. Inside was darkness, broken by a single light in the center of the space. Dr. Marcus Reeves sat in a chair under that light, hands zip-tied behind him, blood running from his nose. But he was alive. "Morgan, don't," he started. "Quiet." The voice came from the shadows, familiar, female, controlled. A woman stepped into the light. Morgan's world tilted. Dr. Patricia Holland, non-executive board member of Redstone Solutions, former Army trauma surgeon, 62 years old, silver hair, surgeon's hands, and the person Morgan had worked with briefly at Riverside General 3 years ago. "You," Morgan whispered. Holland smiled. "Surprised? You shouldn't be. You were always too focused on the obvious suspects. Foster, Langford, Callahan. You never looked at the person coordinating their movements. You were at Riverside for 6 months, consulting position. I watched you work, Captain Hayes, saw your skills, realized you were more than you pretended to be." Holland circled Reeves slowly. "When you exposed Callahan, I knew we had a problem. When you infiltrated Mercy Cross, I knew we had to accelerate our timeline. You ordered Webb's death. Webb was a liability, gathering evidence, threatening to expose years of careful work." Holland's expression hardened. "I built this network from nothing, created a system that moved equipment worth millions while maintaining perfect legitimacy. Webb would have destroyed it all. It is destroyed. 37 arrests, 4 hospitals seized. Your network is finished. This network is finished, but I have others. Different hospitals, different contractors, different methods." Holland pulled a pistol from her jacket. The beautiful thing about being the architect is that I designed redundancies, backup systems, alternative operations. You shut down one piece and three more continue operating. Morgan's hand tightened on her weapon. So why bring me here? Why not just disappear? Because you're a loose end. You and Dr. Reeves both. Holland aimed at Reeves's head. His father is a board member who asks too many questions, and you're the soldier who refuses to quit. I eliminate both problems and rebuild somewhere else. The federal teams surrounding this building might disagree with your plan. Holland laughed. You think I didn't anticipate that? This warehouse has been rigged with enough explosives to level 3 city blocks. The second your teams breach, everyone dies. You, Reeves, 20 federal agents. She gestured to a dead man's switch in her other hand. I let go of this trigger, we all go together. Morgan's mind raced. Holland was serious. The cold calculation in her eyes said she'd kill everyone rather than face prison. What do you want? Morgan asked. Safe passage. 30-minute head start before you alert your teams. I disappear, and you both live. Holland's finger tightened on the trigger. Or we all die here. Your choice. Morgan looked at Reeves. He shook his head slightly. Don't do it. But Morgan wasn't built to sacrifice people to save herself. Fine, she said. You get your 30 minutes. Let him go first. No. You both stay here until I'm clear. Then I'll send the code to defuse the explosives. Holland backed toward a side exit. If you follow me or alert your teams early, I trigger the explosion remotely. Everyone dies. She was almost to the door when Reeves spoke. My father knew, he said quietly, about the network, about your operations. That's why you wanted me at Mercy Cross, wasn't it? To keep me close. Make sure he didn't talk. Holland paused. General Reeves was a complication. He suspected the financial irregularities. Started asking questions. I couldn't have that. Where is he? Dead 3 weeks ago. Made to look like a heart attack. Holland's smile was cruel. Your father was a good man. Pity he couldn't leave well enough alone. Reeves lunged forward despite the zip ties. Morgan grabbed him before he could reach Holland. Easy, she whispered. Holland laughed and disappeared through the side exit. Morgan immediately pulled out the phone. Architect confirmed. Patricia Holland. She's rigged the building with explosives. Dead man's switch. Do not breach. Repeat. Do not breach. Vance's voice crackled back. Copy. Team's holding position. Where is she? East exit. Silver sedan. Get eyes on her, but do not pursue. She has a remote trigger. Morgan turned to Reeves and cut his zip ties with her knife. You okay? She killed my father. I know. And she'll pay for it, but not if we're dead. Morgan scanned the warehouse. Help me find the explosives. If we can defuse them, Holland loses her leverage. They searched frantically. Found the first device behind a support column. Military-grade C4 wired to a radio receiver. Morgan photographed it and sent the image to the tactical team. Bomb squad is en route, Vance reported. ETA 8 minutes. Morgan found 3 more devices in the next 5 minutes, all professionally rigged, all designed to bring the building down. We need to evacuate, Reeves said. If Holland triggers this remotely, she won't, not while she thinks we're here. It's her insurance. Morgan found the 5th device near the main entrance. But once she realizes we're defusing them, she'll detonate immediately. Vance's voice cut in. Holland just got in her vehicle. We're tracking via satellite. She's heading north on Highway 25. Let her go, Morgan said. Keep distance. Make her think she's clear. Morgan, she's getting away. No, she's not. Morgan finished photographing the 5th device. Holland said she has other networks, other hospitals. That means she needs access to resources, money, personnel. She can't just vanish. She'll go somewhere she has infrastructure. Morgan pulled out Foster's drive from her pocket. Started scrolling through files on her phone, financial records, shell companies, property ownership. There. Redstone Solutions owned a private airfield 40 miles north of Denver. Small facility, minimal traffic. Perfect for someone who needed to leave the country quietly. She's heading for the airfield, Morgan said. Redstone owns it. Probably has a plane waiting. How do you know? Because that's what I'd do. Have an exit strategy ready. Cash, fake documents, transportation. She's been planning this contingency for years. Warren's voice joined the channel. We can intercept at the airfield. Block her escape route. No. Let her land. Let her board the plane. The moment she thinks she's safe, she'll let go of the dead man's switch. Morgan looked at the warehouse full of explosives. Then we take her. Bomb squad arrived 7 minutes later. They worked with terrifying speed, disabling devices one by one. Morgan and Reeves were evacuated to a safe perimeter while specialists cleared the building. All devices neutralized, the bomb squad leader reported 20 minutes later. Buildings secure. Morgan got back on the phone with Vance. Status on Holland? Just arrived at the airfield, private jet on the tarmac, she's boarding now. How many people on site? Thermal imaging shows 4. Holland plus 3 others. Likely flight crew. Don't let that plane take off. But wait until she's inside. Contained environment. Limited exits. Federal teams moved into position around the airfield. Morgan watched via satellite feed on a tablet Warren provided. Holland's sedan parked near the jet. She exited the vehicle and walked toward the aircraft with confidence. Still holding the dead man's switch, she climbed the stairs, disappeared inside. Bomb squad confirms all warehouse devices are disarmed, Vance reported. Holland's leverage is gone. Then take her, Morgan said. Tactical teams swarmed the jet from 3 directions. Holland appeared at the aircraft door, dead man's switch raised. I'll do it, she screamed. I'll blow the warehouse. Warehouse is empty, Vance's voice boomed over loudspeakers. Explosives are disarmed. You have no leverage. Surrender now. Holland's face went white with rage. She pressed the trigger. Nothing happened. Federal agents rushed the aircraft. Holland tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. They took her down hard, zip-tied her hands, and dragged her off the plane. It was over. Morgan watched it happen from the federal command vehicle, watched Patricia Holland, the architect, get loaded into a federal transport vehicle in handcuffs. Watched the woman who'd built a network spanning 7 years and 4 states lose everything in 90 seconds. We got her, Warren said quietly. And the 3 people with her on the plane, turns out they're Redstone executives, all connected to the trafficking operation. Morgan nodded numbly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Reeves appeared beside her. My father, did she really kill him? We'll investigate. Get autopsy reports. But Reeves, I'm sorry. He was quiet for a long moment. He died trying to do the right thing, trying to expose corruption. That's something. It is. They stood together watching federal agents process the scene, watching evidence get cataloged, watching justice happen in real time. Morgan's phone buzzed. Message from Vance. Media is going crazy. They want the story. The hero who brought down the network. You ready for that? Morgan typed back. No. Keep my name out of it. Webb deserves the credit. He started this. Understood. But Morgan, the Army wants to talk. About reinstatement. About recognition. About making things right. Morgan pocketed the phone without responding. She'd spent 3 years being invisible. 1 month being hunted. Hours being bait. She didn't know what came next. But for the first time in 3 years, she wasn't running from her past. The federal building was chaos when they returned. Prosecutors swarming. Agents processing evidence. Media camped outside demanding information. Warren pulled Morgan into a quiet conference room. Patricia Holland is cooperating, giving up everyone connected to the network. We're looking at another 50 arrests in the next week. Maybe more. What about Redstone Solutions? Board of Directors is suspended pending investigation. CEO and CFO are in custody. The company's military contracts are frozen. It'll take months to unravel the full scope, but we'll dismantle every piece of it. Morgan felt something loosen in her chest. And the other networks Holland mentioned? We found evidence of operations in California, Texas, and Virginia. Federal teams are moving on all of them simultaneously. By this time tomorrow, the entire infrastructure collapses. It was more than Morgan had hoped for, more than Webb had lived to see. But it still felt incomplete. What about the soldiers who died in Syria, she asked. The compromised intelligence that got them killed. Warren's expression softened. Pentagon is reviewing the operation. NSA confirmed Holland's network provided equipment to the same criminal organizations that ambushed your unit. They're considering it a direct connection. Considering? It's complicated. Proving operational causation requires evidence that... I don't need legalese, Morgan interrupted. I need to know if the families of the soldiers who died will get answers. Warren met her eyes. Yes, they will. I'll make sure of it personally. Morgan nodded. It wasn't enough. Nothing would ever be enough. But it was something. She left the federal building as the sun set over Denver. The city looked different somehow, cleaner, like a weight had been lifted. Her encrypted phone rang. Vance. The Army wants you back, Vance said without preamble. Full reinstatement, rank restored, public commendation. They're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero, I'm just a soldier who finished a mission. That's what heroes say. Vance paused. What do you want, Morgan? Really want? Morgan thought about it. About 3 years of night shifts and invisible work. About Webb's dog tags in her pocket. About Emma asking if her father died for nothing. I want to make sure this never happens again, she said finally. I want to hunt the people who think they're untouchable. The ones hiding behind institutions and authority and money. That's a long war. I've fought longer. Vance was quiet for a moment. There's a position. Federal task force investigating corruption in military supply chains. They need someone who understands both medicine and combat operations. Someone who can go undercover. Someone they can't intimidate. And you're offering me this position? I'm saying it exists. What you do with that information is your choice. Morgan looked at the city lights spreading below. Somewhere out there, other networks were operating. Other criminals hiding behind legitimacy. Other people who thought they were too smart to be caught. I'll think about it, she said. But she already knew her answer. 3 days later, Morgan stood in a federal courtroom watching Patricia Holland enter a plea. The woman who'd built an empire looked small in prison orange, diminished, broken. Their eyes met across the courtroom. Holland smiled slightly, leaned toward her lawyer, whispered something. The lawyer stood. Your Honor, Dr. Holland wishes to make a statement. The judge allowed it. Holland approached the microphone. I built something remarkable. A network that operated for 7 years without detection. Moved $40 million in equipment, performed procedures that saved lives when no one else would help. She paused. I did it all while maintaining a legitimate career, while contributing to society, while appearing completely normal. Is there a point to this? The judge asked. The point is that Captain Morgan Hayes only caught me because I allowed her to, because I got bored, because I wanted to see if anyone was smart enough to figure it out. Holland's smile widened. She wasn't. She stumbled into breadcrumbs I left deliberately. This whole investigation was my experiment, and she played her part perfectly. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged his gavel. Morgan sat perfectly still, face neutral, because she recognized what Holland was doing, trying to claim victory even in defeat, trying to maintain control of the narrative. It was pathetic. The judge sentenced Holland to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. Multiple counts of conspiracy, trafficking, murder, terrorism. The sentences would run consecutively. Holland would die in prison. As marshals led her away, Holland looked at Morgan one final time. Morgan held her gaze without flinching. Then Holland was gone. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. But they weren't looking for Morgan. The official story credited Lieutenant Marcus Webb with exposing the network. His widow and daughter gave statements about his bravery. Federal prosecutors took credit for the investigation. Morgan Hayes remained a footnote, an unnamed investigator who'd helped build the case. Exactly how she wanted it. She was walking to her car when someone called her name. Emma Webb stood on the courthouse steps with her mother. They said my dad's name, Emma said quietly. Said he was a hero. Said he exposed everything. He did. But you finished it. Morgan handed her the box containing Webb's dog tags. These belong with you. Your father was braver than most soldiers I've ever known. He fought a war nobody could see. And he won. Sarah Webb took the box with trembling hands. Thank you for keeping your promise. Morgan nodded and left before the emotion in her chest could escape. Her phone buzzed with a message from Vance. The task force position is yours if you want it. No pressure. But they need an answer by Monday. Morgan sat in her car for a long time, engine off, watching the sunset. She thought about Syria, about 12 soldiers she'd saved, about 3 years of hiding, about Webb dying alone, about Holland thinking she'd won even as her empire burned. Monday came. Morgan accepted the position. 6 months later, she was embedded in a military hospital in North Carolina investigating irregularities in pharmaceutical shipments, working night shifts, staying invisible, building another case against people who thought they were untouchable. Her phone rang during a break. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her. Captain Hayes? The voice was young, male, nervous. My name is Lieutenant David Morrison. I'm a logistics officer at Fort Bragg. I've been tracking equipment discrepancies for 8 months. I think there's another network operating, bigger than the one you exposed. Morgan's blood went cold. What kind of discrepancies? Surgical equipment, pharmaceuticals, going to hospitals in 3 states. The pattern matches what Lieutenant Webb documented before. Stop, Morgan interrupted. Don't say another word over an unsecured line. Where are you right now? My office. Base is locked down for the night. I'm alone. Get somewhere public, somewhere with witnesses. Stay there until I call you back on a secure line. How do I know I can trust you? You don't, but Webb trusted me, and I finished what he started. Morgan was already moving toward her car. I'll do the same for you, but you need to stay alive long enough to let me. Silence on the line, then, okay, I'll wait for your call. The line went dead. Morgan sat in her car with her heart hammering. Another network, another architect hiding in plain sight, another soldier risking everything to do the right thing. She pulled out her phone and called Vance. I need a full background on Lieutenant David Morrison, and I need a team ready to move on Fort Bragg within 24 hours. What's happening? Morgan started the engine. We're going hunting again. Morgan drove through the night toward Fort Bragg with Vance's voice steady in her ear through the encrypted line. Morrison's record is clean, 3 years active duty, logistics coordination, no disciplinary issues, family in Ohio, engaged to be married next spring. Vance paused. He's legitimate, Morgan. Not a plant. Not bait. Webb was legitimate too. Look what happened to him. Which is why I've already dispatched a protection team. They'll reach Morrison in 20 minutes. You're 2 hours out. Morgan pressed harder on the accelerator. 2 hours felt like forever when someone's life was counting down. The base was quiet when she arrived just after midnight. Morrison waited in the 24-hour dining facility surrounded by late-shift soldiers and Vance's protection team. He looked exactly like his file photo, mid-20s, sandy hair, nervous eyes that kept scanning the room. Morgan slid into the booth across from him. Lieutenant Morrison, tell me everything. He pulled out a tablet and kept his voice low. Started noticing it 4 months ago. Surgical kits ordered for the base hospital, but delivery logs showed quantities that didn't match. Called the supply company. They confirmed full shipments, but our inventory was short, consistently. How much are we talking? $60,000 in equipment over 4 months. Small enough that nobody questioned it, but I tracked patterns. Same delivery driver, same receiving officer, same day of the week. Morrison swiped through images. Then I found these. Shipping manifests showing equipment delivered to Fort Bragg, but rerouted mid-transit to civilian hospitals. 3 facilities in North Carolina, all showing the same discrepancies Webb had documented. Morgan's blood ran cold. You brought this to your commanding officer? Twice. He told me to stop wasting time on administrative errors. Said I was seeing patterns that didn't exist. Morrison's hands shook slightly. Then last week I found his name on one of the manifests, Captain Bruce Highland. He's authorizing the diversions. Did you confront him? No. But someone knew I was looking. 2 nights ago my apartment was broken into. Nothing stolen, just things moved. Messages left. He pulled up a photo on his phone. Same block letters Morgan had seen before. Stop looking or stop breathing. The same threat Webb got. The same threat Morgan got. Which meant the same network was operating, just with different faces in different places. We're taking you into protective custody, Morgan said. Tonight. You disappear until we can build a case that... No. Morrison's voice was firm despite the fear in his eyes. Webb disappeared and they killed him anyway. I'm not hiding. I'm finishing this. Morgan recognized that tone, that stubborn commitment to doing the right thing even when it was dangerous. She'd used that same tone herself more times than she could count. Then we do it together, she said. But my way, following protocols that keep you breathing. Morrison nodded. What do we need? Everything you've documented, every manifest, every transaction, every communication. Morgan gestured to Vance's team. They'll take you to a secure location. You'll upload all evidence to federal servers. Then we coordinate raids on all 3 hospitals simultaneously before anyone realizes we're moving. How long? 72 hours. Maybe less if we move fast. Morrison handed over the tablet. It's all here. Encrypted. Password is WebHero2026. I figured, if I didn't make it, someone should know he mattered. Morgan's throat tightened. He did matter, and so do you. The protection team escorted Morrison out. Morgan stayed behind with Vance on the encrypted line. This is the same network, Morgan said quietly. Holland said she had redundancies, other operations. This is one of them. Or it's a completely separate organization using the same playbook. Either way, we burn it down. Vance was quiet for a moment. The Pentagon is pushing back, saying we're overreaching, that investigating military bases requires different authorization than civilian hospitals. Then get the authorization. It's not that simple. Holland's conviction embarrassed a lot of people, made the military look incompetent. They're not eager to expose more corruption. Morgan's jaw clenched. So they'd rather let criminals operate than face bad press? I didn't say I agreed with it. I'm saying we need to be smart. Build an airtight case before we move, make it impossible for them to bury. Morgan spent the next 60 hours doing exactly that. She worked with Morrison remotely, cross-referencing his evidence with the data from Foster's drive. Found connections between Captain Hyland and Karen Stiles, the VP of operations from Mercy Cross, who is already in federal custody. Stiles was cooperating, gave up names, dates, methods. Confirmed that after Holland's arrest, several network members had scattered and rebuilt operations at military bases where oversight was minimal. Hyland was one of them, a mid-level logistics officer who'd learned the system from Stiles and adapted it to military supply chains. But he wasn't working alone. Morgan found communications between Hyland and a civilian administrator at one of the North Carolina hospitals, a woman named Dr. Rachel Kearns, former Army surgeon, retired 5 years ago, now chief medical officer at Pinehurst Regional Medical Center. The same rank, the same background, the same MO as Holland. Morgan called Vance. We have another architect, Dr. Rachel Kearns. She's running the North Carolina network. Evidence? Financial records showing payments from shell companies to Kearns totaling $2 million in 3 years. Communications with Hyland coordinating equipment diversions. Patient files showing off-book procedures identical to Foster's operation. Morgan pulled up Kearns' photo. And she worked at Walter Reed Medical Center at the same time as Holland. They knew each other. Vance swore softly. How many more are out there? I don't know. But we stop this one and make enough noise that the others go underground. Force mistakes. Create pressure. Or we push them into accelerating, cleaning house like they did with Webb. Morgan thought about Morrison in protective custody, about Emma Webb asking if her father died for nothing, about 3 years of being invisible while corruption thrived. Then we move fast, she said, before they have time to react. Federal teams coordinated the raids for Sunday morning at 0600. Simultaneous strikes on Fort Bragg, Pinehurst Regional, and 2 other hospitals in the network. Over 200 federal agents, military police, NSA surveillance support. Morgan was embedded with the team hitting Pinehurst Regional. They breached at exactly 600, flooded through entrances with warrants and weapons and the full weight of federal authority. Staff scattered, patients were secured, administrators were rounded up in conference rooms. Dr. Rachel Kearns was in her office reviewing surgical schedules when agents came through the door. She looked up calmly. I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Morgan entered behind the tactical team. Dr. Kearns, you're under arrest for conspiracy, equipment trafficking, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Kearns smiled. You must be Captain Hayes. Patricia told me about you. Said you were persistent, annoying, but ultimately predictable. Holland's in prison. For now. But her lawyers are filing appeals, claiming entrapment, arguing that her confession was coerced. Kearns stood slowly. She'll be out in 2 years. Maybe less. And when she is, the network rebuilds. No, Morgan said quietly. It doesn't. You think arresting me changes anything? There are dozens of us, operating in hospitals across the country. You shut down one piece and 3 more adapt. Kearns gestured around her office. This has been happening for decades. Military equipment theft is a billion-dollar industry. You're not stopping it. You're barely slowing it down. Morgan stepped closer. Webb slowed it down. Morrison slowed it down. Every soldier and nurse and logistics officer who refuses to look away slows it down. And eventually, people like you run out of places to hide. Kearns' smile faded. Brave words. Let's see if you're still saying them in 5 years when you're chasing the next network. And the next. And the next. Federal agents took her into custody. Morgan watched them lead Kearns away in handcuffs, her words echoing. Was she right? Would there always be another network? Another architect hiding behind legitimacy? Probably. But that didn't mean the fight wasn't worth having. The raids yielded 17 arrests, seized equipment worth $8 million, exposed corruption spanning 3 military bases and 5 civilian hospitals. Federal prosecutors were already building cases that would take years to fully litigate. Morrison came out of protective custody 2 days later, met Morgan at a coffee shop in Raleigh looking exhausted but alive. They're calling me a whistleblower. he said quietly, saying I'm a hero for exposing the network. You are. Doesn't feel like it. Feels like I just painted a target on my back for the rest of my career. Morgan understood that. She'd worn that same target for 3 years. Webb felt the same way, she said. So did I. But Morrison, what you did mattered. $8 million in stolen equipment is back where it belongs. 17 criminals are facing justice. Soldiers and patients will get the supplies they need because you refuse to look away. And in 5 years, there'll be another network doing the same thing. Maybe. But there'll also be people like you and Webb and me refusing to let them operate in silence. Morgan met his eyes. That's the fight. Not winning once. Fighting every single time until the criminals realize it's not worth the risk. Morrison nodded slowly. What happens to me now? That's your choice. You can transfer to a different posting, take a medical discharge, or you can stay and help us build systems that make this harder to repeat. What did you choose? Morgan thought about it. About 3 years at Riverside. About 1 month at Mercy Cross. About 6 months hunting networks across 4 states. I chose to keep fighting in different ways, quieter ways, but fighting nonetheless. Does it get easier? No. But it gets clearer. You learn who you are when nobody's watching, when there's no medal or promotion or recognition, just you and the choice to do something or do nothing. Morgan stood. Webb made his choice. You made yours. Now you get to live with it, for better or worse. Morrison left, looking thoughtful. Morgan stayed at the coffee shop watching the morning crowd. Nurses heading to shifts, doctors grabbing coffee. Ordinary people doing ordinary work. Most of them would never know about the networks operating in their hospitals. Would never know about the soldiers who died exposing corruption. Would never know about the quiet battles fought in hospital corridors and federal courtrooms. And that was okay. Because the work mattered whether anyone noticed or not. Morgan's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Captain Hayes? The voice was female. Older, tired. My name is Colonel Sandra Price. I command the Joint Medical Logistics Division at the Pentagon. I've been reading your reports on the trafficking networks. I'd like to offer you a position. Morgan's instincts prickled. What kind of position? Director of Medical Supply Chain Integrity. Newly created role. You'd have authority to investigate irregularities across all military medical facilities worldwide. Build systems to prevent theft. Train personnel to recognize patterns. Hunt the networks before they establish themselves. And report to whom? Directly to me, with oversight from the Inspector General's office. Full authority, full resources, full protection. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. Why me? Morgan asked. Because you've exposed 2 major networks in 8 months. Because you understand both combat medicine and criminal operations. Because soldiers trust you and criminals fear you. Colonel Price paused. And because you're one of the few people I've met who does this work for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? Not glory, not promotion, not revenge, just the stubborn belief that things should be better, that soldiers deserve better, that corruption shouldn't be tolerated just because it's complicated to fight. Morgan was quiet for a long moment. I need to think about it. Take your time. But Captain Hayes, the offer stands as long as you want it. We need people like you, people who don't quit. The call ended. Morgan sat with the weight of the decision. A position at the Pentagon meant visibility, authority, resources to make real change. But it also meant politics, bureaucracy, fighting battles in conference rooms instead of hospital corridors. Was that what she wanted? She thought about Patricia Holland in prison, about Rachel Kearns in federal custody, about Morrison safe because he'd trusted the system, about Webb's daughter asking if her father died for nothing. The answer came clearly. 3 weeks later, Morgan stood in a Pentagon conference room wearing her dress uniform for the first time in 3 years. The medals on her chest felt foreign, the rank insignia freshly pressed. Colonel Price conducted the brief ceremony with military efficiency, promoted Morgan to major, assigned her to the newly formed Medical Supply Chain Integrity Division, gave her an office, a staff, an authority that would have seemed impossible 8 months ago. Your first assignment, Price said, handing over a file. Investigate equipment discrepancies at 3 overseas military hospitals, Germany, Japan, South Korea. Pattern matches the networks you've already exposed. Morgan opened the file. Shipping manifests, financial records, communication logs. The same signatures of corruption she'd learned to recognize. How big? She asked. Unknown. But if it follows the same structure as Holland's network, we're talking tens of millions, maybe more. Morgan looked at the file, at the evidence of more criminals hiding behind military institutions, more stolen equipment, more soldiers at risk. She should have felt overwhelmed, exhausted, defeated by the scale of corruption. Instead, she felt focused. "I'll need a team," Morgan said. "People I trust, people who understand this work." "Already approved. Dr. Reeves has accepted a position as your medical liaison. Lieutenant Morrison is transferring to serve as logistics specialist." Price smiled slightly. Apparently, they both said they'd only take the positions if you were running the division. Morgan felt something warm in her chest. Gratitude, maybe. Or recognition that she wasn't fighting alone anymore. "When do I start?" "You already have." The next 6 months were a blur. Morgan built her team carefully, recruited soldiers who'd been overlooked, nurses who'd noticed patterns but been dismissed, logistics officers who cared more about doing the job right than climbing rank. They investigated 13 hospitals across 7 countries, exposed corruption worth $48 million, arrested 63 people, built systems that made theft harder and detection easier. It wasn't perfect. Networks still operated, criminals still found gaps. The fight never ended. But slowly, painfully slowly, things got better. 1 year after Holland's arrest, Morgan received an invitation to speak at a military medical conference. The topic was supply chain integrity. The audience was 500 medical personnel from bases worldwide. She almost declined. Public speaking wasn't her strength. She preferred working behind the scenes, but Colonel Price convinced her. They need to hear from someone who's actually fought this fight, someone who can explain why it matters. So Morgan stood at the podium in a conference hall in Washington, D.C., and told the truth. "I'm not a hero," she began. "I'm a soldier who spent 3 years hiding from my past, who worked night shifts at hospitals where doctors didn't know my name, who was fired, mocked, and called unstable for questioning authority." The room was silent, but I learned something during those 3 years. Being invisible doesn't mean being powerless. Nobody noticing your work doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And the quietest voices can sometimes shout the loudest truths. She talked about Webb, about Morrison, about the nurses and soldiers and logistics officers who noticed irregularities and reported them despite pressure to stay silent. The networks we've exposed operated for years because good people looked away, because speaking up seemed risky, because questioning authority felt dangerous. Morgan met the eyes of the audience. But staying silent is more dangerous. Every piece of stolen equipment is a soldier who doesn't get the care they need. Every compromised shipment is a patient who suffers. Every dollar stolen is a betrayal of everyone who serves. She finished with Webb's note. "Read it aloud to the silent room. Don't stop until they're all gone. Every last one." "That's the mission," Morgan said quietly. "Not glamorous, not easy, but necessary. And if each of us commits to it, to noticing, reporting, refusing to look away, we make it harder for the criminals. We make it easier for the next whistleblower. We make the system a little bit better." The applause started slowly, then built. 500 medical personnel standing to honor not Morgan, but the idea that ordinary people could fight extraordinary corruption. After the conference, a young Army nurse approached Morgan in the hallway. "Major Hayes? I'm Staff Sergeant Lisa Torres. I work at a hospital in Texas. I've been noticing equipment discrepancies for 3 months. I thought maybe I was imagining things. But after hearing you speak," she pulled out a folder. "I documented everything, just in case." Morgan took the folder and saw the familiar patterns. Shipping manifests, missing inventory, financial irregularities, another network, another architect hiding in plain sight. "You did the right thing," Morgan said. "Now, let's finish it together." They did. Within 2 months, the Texas network was exposed. 11 arrests, $6 million in recovered equipment, and 1 more soldier who refused to stay silent. Morgan's division grew. 20 investigators, 30 support staff, operations spanning 16 countries. The work was relentless. The criminals adaptive, the fight ongoing. But Morgan had learned something essential. The fight itself was the point. Not winning once, not achieving some final victory, but showing up every day and refusing to quit. Building systems that made corruption harder, training people to recognize patterns, creating a culture where whistleblowers were protected instead of punished. On the 3-year anniversary of Holland's arrest, Morgan visited Webb's grave. Small military cemetery outside Richmond. Simple headstone. Fresh flowers from his family. She placed her own flowers, white roses, and stood quietly. "We got 17 more networks," she said to the stone. 63 arrests. 48 million recovered. Your evidence started all of it. Your courage made the rest possible. The wind moved through the trees. Birds sang somewhere distant. "Your daughter's in college now. Pre-med. Says she wants to be a military doctor. Fight from the inside like her dad did." Morgan smiled slightly. "Sarah's doing okay. Still hurts, but she's healing. They both wanted you to know they're proud, that you mattered." She stood there for a long time, thinking about Syria, about Riverside, about all the invisible battles fought by people nobody noticed. Then she drove back to the Pentagon, where her team waited with evidence of another network operating in Eastern Europe. More stolen equipment, more criminals hiding behind institutions, more work to be done. Morgan walked into the office and rolled up her sleeves, because this was her mission now. Not seeking recognition, not chasing medals, not trying to prove anything to people who'd dismissed her, just doing the work that mattered. Protecting soldiers who couldn't protect themselves, exposing corruption that thrived in silence, building systems that made tomorrow a little bit better than today. The woman they'd fired 3 years ago for questioning a surgeon's decisions was now running a Pentagon division with authority to investigate corruption worldwide. The nurse they'd mocked for acting like she belonged in military operations was now training the next generation of medical personnel to fight these battles. The soldier they'd declared mentally unstable was now the person criminals feared most. Not because she was perfect, not because she never made mistakes, not because the fight was easy or the victories certain, but because she'd learned the most important lesson of all: power doesn't come from being noticed. It comes from refusing to be silenced, from showing up when nobody's watching, from doing what's right even when it's hard. And nobody, not the doctors who dismissed her, not the administrators who fired her, not the criminals who threatened her, not the system that tried to erase her, could take that away. Morgan looked at the files on her desk. Evidence of networks in Poland, Estonia, and South Korea. Patterns that needed investigating. Criminals who thought they were safe. She opened the first file and started reading. The hunt continued, and this time she wasn't hunting alone.